I am Brandon Clark. This is my co-host Swall Hall, and today we're meeting on uncommon grounds. Now, we're sorry for the bit of time off. We've had Easter, we've had a lot of different difficulties, but we're definitely back. We thought we spoke between ourselves and thought maybe we could call this season 2 or something. You know, we're back officially now and consistent. It is funny. One more thing I wanted to add. I felt like I kind of jinxed us because this is our 10th episode, and I was telling Swall 2 weeks ago, like, oh well, once we get 10, that's like somewhat of a milestone, and then we missed the next 2 weeks before we could
Yes.
record it. But we're glad to be here. We got a lot to talk about. Obviously, Pope Francis dying yesterday, it's recently kind of makes it a big thing we got to talk about. So we're going to start there, and then we're going to go into RFK Jr., his autism comments, and on the Abrego Garcia deportation stuff that's been pretty much taking over the news cycle since it's happened about 2 or 3 weeks ago or so. And then we're going to end with an abortion debate. Me and Swall have sparred on this topic a bit before in longer form on my channel, so I'm happy to rehash it in a shorter form here for you guys. We are going to start with Pope Francis, where Swall will take us away, though.
Yeah. Very unfortunate, obviously, for me as a Catholic, but the late great Pope Francis passed away. It was actually technically this morning. It was kind of like 5, 6 a.m. or so. The news report came out about 7:30, so it's unclear kind of where in there, but they're saying April 21st. So the good news is he was able to make it through one last Easter, which is cool, passing like the day after.
Mm-hmm.
So as a Catholic, we kind of look at it as like he kind of held all of our hands across the finish line before he decided to rest, which is cool because me and thousands of other Catholics were all welcomed into the church this past weekend. So, but yeah, just reflecting on,
Congratulations.
thank you, thank you. Just reflecting on his pontificate and his papacy. He's been one of the most socially progressive popes that the church has had, and obviously, a lot of the rad trad Catholics are kind of mad about that. But as somebody who I consider to be more in the kind of middle of things, I'm a big fan of a lot of what Pope Francis did. One of the few popes to speak on climate change and social justice, and he, made it so we were able to bless same sex couple individuals. So, like, if you're in a gay marriage or a gay relationship, you can still come up for a blessing. Of course, obviously, from the church's perspective, they're not blessing your union; they're just blessing the individuals. But still, a proper thing to do in my opinion. And he was really big on Vatican transparency and did a lot to put the abuse and stuff on blast, the clerical abuses and stuff. He didn't hesitate to excommunicate people and remove them from their posts and just take them out. Yeah, now obviously what will happen for those of you who aren't Catholic is we're going to enter what's called the conclave, which, yes, is the name of that movie behind me,
Yeah.
where they will all the cardinals and bishops, the cardinals from around the world will all come together. They'll be locked in the Vatican until they pick a new pope, essentially. Um, and so there's been a lot of discussion about that as to whether the church is going to continue in this progressive direction or whether the rad trads will have their day and take it back to the conservatives. So, yeah,
How long has he been Pope?
he was pope for just under 13 years.
Okay.
So in
Is that
20,
typical, short, long?
so it kind of just depends. I mean, obviously it's been going for 2000 years. So in recent years, that's pretty typical.
Mhm.
But then you've got popes who are like popes for a week if you go back in history because they get murdered or, or they step down or any other reason. So it was a nice, healthy pontificate. And of course, he was 88. So none of us were really expecting him to make it that much longer, anyways. But yeah, so I don't know what questions or what you want to add to that, but I'm just hoping and praying that we get a pope who is similar to Francis in just in kind and kind of like Pope Francis. His name is Francis. You get to choose a name when you become pope, and he chose that name because of Saint Francis, who notoriously lived a very poor life because he didn't believe in uh, you know all of the papal excess and all the riches and stuff that the church has, and so he was way more in favor of speaking with the poor, eating with the poor, helping the poor. He's often depicted with dogs because he would get chased out of town street preaching, and he would start preaching to the animals, like the dogs begging for scraps and stuff, because he believed that everybody was part of God's creation. So that's kind of who Francis was inspired by, and so I just hope that we have a pope with a similar heart moving forward. So
Yeah, so I want to start with a lighthearted joke. So I hope I'm not crossing any lines here. But
you're good.
seeing as he passed away in close proximity to Easter, what's the chance he rises in a few?
Yes.
But no, and one more if I can get it off. You mentioned him making it one last Easter, and you missed the real big achievement that he was able to stay alive for, which was meeting every American man, woman, and child's hero, J.D. Vance.
That's true. That's
Yeah.
true. The day before, I totally forgot about that.
Yes, yes,
Yeah, no, and the memes already started where they're like,
yeah.
he was the last one to see him alive. What did he do?
Hmm. Yeah. So, and that to me, that's the real achievement, something we all, I mean, dream
All
of.
aspire.
But yeah, like I was mentioning to Swall before, he's the professional on Pope Francis here. I don't know as much about him, admittedly. Things I've seen about him, I like, as Swall mentioned. I think he is very socially progressive for like how you would imagine a pope to be and things like that. With like the blessing of the unions, I saw clips of him talking at I think it was Gathering of the Social Movements or something in
Hmm.
2016 in
Hmm.
Rome, where he was talking about like blockades and sanctions, and he spoke up for like Cuba and I think even Palestine, and he
Yep.
was he even kind of talked about like I don't know if he ever used the word capitalism directly, but maybe like the evils of money, kind of how
Yep.
he's putting it. I had a line here that I thought was good from him where he was speaking and he said, "Who's really in charge? Money? Then how does it govern with the whip of fear, inequality, and economic, social, and military violence?" Which I think is
Hmm.
prescient. I like anyone who's willing to speak against the power of money. So
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, I don't have a lot to add. I think it's always sad when someone passes away. I hope that it's not too much of a shock to the church. My biggest questions would just be of like kind of I guess the traditions of like would you kind of answer to like what would be
Yeah.
next? I talked about is he are most is was his age typical for the Pope? I know they're typically older, but like was he like old for it or
Yeah. I mean, near the end of it, 88 is starting to push it. I think there's a like there. I don't think we have a limit on age for Pope, but I know for like cardinals, which are the people who vote for the Pope,
yeah.
there's like a cap, an
Okay.
age cap, and he was well. I mean, well beyond
And then
that cap.
what is the typical pathway for Pope? Is it cardinals typically that get put up to the Pope or
Usually, but in theory, it has happened a few times. It could like they could pick me. They wouldn't.
okay.
They don't know who
Yeah.
I am.
That was gonna
But
be my next question was like, was a Trump politics scenario possible where like a complete
like
outsider comes in and they're
it
like,
is, but it's I think it's happened like I mean I could count it on my hands where
yeah,
like one time they were really trying to pick and they picked this one guy and they were about to go through with it and then like I think like a dove landed on some dude and they were like he's the one, that's a sign, and so they just picked him and he ended up being a good pope, but
mm.
um
Do you
so you
know?
usually it's a cardinal though.
Yeah. Do you know, or like, did they cite reasons in particular why Pope Francis was picked, like what they liked about him, or is that kind of more closed door?
So no. In fact, it's kind of controversial. So Pope Benedict, the Pope before him,
Hmm.
actually stepped down, which I believe has maybe happened like it's either twice in recent memory, like in
Hmm.
our life, not in our lifetimes, but like in recent history,
Hmm.
or it's like twice ever. So it
Yeah.
was very unorthodox, and he sort of they can't pick their successor, but he essentially like made it very clear that he wanted Pope Francis
Mm.
to correct him.
So did he
Um,
win by like sweeping vote? Was it almost unanimous, or was there still the
Yeah, so it has to be, I believe it's like a two-thirds majority. Don't quote me on that, but it has
okay.
to be,
Mhm.
I mean, just like any other vote, it has to
Yeah.
be majority. So it was the majority, but the controversy is that some people think that since it's weird for a pope to step down, that maybe there was like outside pressures, and then like you get the conspiracy theorists who are like the Freemasons or they hired Pope Francis to like. There's all this stuff.
Do they say that it's people
So
trying to make the church woke because he's like
yes,
progressive?
that's exactly what it is, and it
That's the
irritates
first
me
thing
to
that came to
no
my mind.
end,
Yeah.
because there's literally no grounds for it.
Do
And one
you?
other thing that gives people some pause is when they pick the successor and they've officially picked it. Like I said, they're all locked in the Vatican, so they they can't talk to press or anything.
Yeah.
So they burn up all the vote tallies in a chimney, and then white smoke and I think black smoke comes out. If it's black smoke, that means they haven't picked them yet. So they'll do it at the end of each day. And if
Hmm.
it's white smoke, that means we picked them. When it was Francis, it like came out black for like a few seconds and then changed to white, which is just
Mm,
something that happens with like resin and burning.
yeah.
But if you're a conspiracy theorist, then that's like,
That's
we'll
all it takes.
see
Yep.
that there was something wrong with it. And yeah,
They're
so
trying to warn everyone. And yeah.
yeah.
So what did the guy before him step down for? Was it any big thing or?
Age and like
Okay.
essentially the Joe Biden
How old,
situation. He was
how old
just
was
like,
he?
I'd have to look it up, but he was in
Okay.
his late 80s as
Okay.
well.
Yeah.
And he actually lived about until 20 like 18 or 19.
Hmm.
And so sometimes he would show up and do some popes like stuff still,
Hmm.
which is another reason the conspiracy theorists were like, see, he knows he's still the pope.
That's funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess my only other question would be, was he similar to Pope Francis? Like, did he pick him because he's like, I want you to carry it on, or was it like, did he kind of change the everything with his socially progressive and different views and things?
Yeah, so he actually is quite a bit different from Francis, definitely more traditional.
Hmm.
There's a movie on Netflix called The Two Popes where it depicts kind of a fictionalized version of what Benedict and Francis's relationship was like.
Okay.
And not to go on too much of a tangent, but when you take communion in a Catholic church, there's this whole thing where you have to be a Catholic to take it, and
Hmm.
you have to be a Catholic in good standing, which means you have to have gone to confession like recently and like purge yourself of
Yep.
sins and stuff. And there's a quote from the movie where Pope Francis is like, it's not the Eucharist, the communion is not just like our prized, our special possession that's me. It's just for us. It's food for the sick. And so he had this way more liberal view of like, if you haven't gone to confession, like this will help you. Like this is bringing you closer to God. He was quite a bit more liberal, I would say.
What do you think?
And
I guess, what do you think made him pick him then? Did he say, was he
um,
touched by a dove?
no, I would have to do more research, honestly, into
Yeah.
that. But like I said, he didn't. He can. He can only like suggest. He can't like pick because he's not in he's not in the conclave. Like the Pope doesn't get to be a part of that. But he can heavily suggest. Like if I had my day, I would pick. Like he can.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know what he saw in him. Another quote from that movie is that one pope, God chooses to correct the last pope's flaws,
Mhm.
and Pope Benedict in the movie is like, I'm excited to see how I'm corrected
Yeah.
by Francis. So yeah,
Hmm. So
very
he knew,
interesting.
I guess the last thing, he knew he was different when he picked him, though. It wasn't like a
Yeah, yeah.
reverse
It wasn't
proof.
like
Gotcha.
yeah, no, it wasn't like an Uno reverse. Like what?
Yeah.
I mean, he was part of. There's an order in the church called Jesuits who are
Hmm.
known for being woke libs, and
Hmm.
Pope Francis was a part of that fraternity. So
Hell
it's
yeah.
not like anybody. He's actually the first Jesuit pope we had, and so it's not really a surprise to anybody that he was kind
Hell
of
yeah.
progressive.
I guess, okay, I said that was the last one. One last question for real.
Yeah.
Are there any names like when this happens? Are there names like with presidential elections, and what are the names floating around?
Yes, and let me make sure I know where he's from.
Hmm.
Uh,
I'm glad there is. Is it just one or is
yes,
it?
there's a few of them. One of them's the guy's name is Pizza Bala, and I would love to have a Pope pizza. Um,
Okay. Yeah.
but there's also Robert Serra. He is a African American cardinal,
Has
which
there been a black pope?
I think would make him the first black pope. And he's uh, really in the conversation. Pizza Bala, and then there's like one other one. Of course, we laity, like us normie Catholics, have our favorites. I would
Mhm.
like Bishop Barron. He's
Yeah.
like a influencer one. You might have seen him before. I would like him to be it,
Do they
but
like low key campaign?
yes, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There's a lot of they would like to present it as if it's all above board spiritual, and obviously as a Catholic I believe that it's guided by God, but that doesn't stop the uh
Politicking.
politicking. Like in
Mhm.
Conclave, the movie, they'll go out of their way when they're in the conclave to like expose, oh, before he was a priest, this cardinal had an illegitimate son, yada,
Mm.
yada, yada. And look what he did to the woman. So he's not worthy, and it can dissuade people's interest in voting for that person. And so there will definitely be, and like I said, right now, there's a big trad versus progressive, like, I mean,
Mhm.
just like in every other part of our
Yep. Yep.
life
Yep.
right now. And
Yep.
so it's really a battleground this time of which direction is the church going to go, tradition or tradition and progression, which is where I would like to go.
So if I can stake my vote, that absolutely has no stake. Actually, I want the woman, and honestly, and I'm sorry if this is disrespectful, if she's not like Catholic, but the woman who told JD Vance and Trump to treat immigrants with respect.
Oh, she's Episcopalian.
Okay, so no,
That's an
no,
Episcopalian.
no possibility on her being Pope, or
No, because if she was a lay, well, they wouldn't pick a man. But yeah, no, unfortunate. Well, not unfortunate to me, but unfortunately for you,
yeah,
no,
yeah. Mhm.
she won't. She wouldn't be able.
All right. Well, hey, from a topic that you're a professional on to a topic that I'm a professional on, I think next we'll jump into the RFK stuff. Unless you did have something else you want to throw on about the
No,
Pope.
I mean, last thing is just for anyone, Catholic, not Catholic, religious, not religious. My advice, not that anybody asked for it, is a verse from Romans is to mourn with the mourners. And when people are going through hard times, it's not really the time to gloat and dunk. I said as much when Roe v. Wade was overturned, and my circles were throwing parties and you know throw filling up balloons and stuff. That is in bad taste and in bad form when people are going through something. Even if I disagree, and obviously I'm on the other side of Roe v. Wade, but I still thought, it was a hard day for a lot of people, and to just mourn with the mourners. And when people are going through things, not to put salt in the wound. That's just
I
gross
agree, and
behavior.
I'll even give you one further. I think you're a lot worse of a person if you're going to make fun of the Pope dying than someone who made fun of Roe v. Wade. Personally, I don't know. I don't think
Yeah.
anyone dying should be made fun of. That's
Right.
just my
Right.
maybe as like a baseline, but
I'm with
especially if
you.
you're like, oh, you guys look up to this guy as like, your guy, or I don't want to like overstep what you guys look up to him as, but he's
Yeah.
like powerful to you guys, and now
Yeah.
it's like, come on, that's kind of crazy. But
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. RFK had some pretty crazy comments about autism, about autistic children. Nothing really. I mean, it's shocking, but I can't say shocking based off how he's spoken about this issue for years now. It really sets me off. Like I said, I've worked in the autism community for 8 or 9 years now. I At this point, I don't know if RFK Jr.'s ever met like a real autistic person, or if he's only ever met like super low functioning autistic people, because the way he talks about them are as if like they're inhumane. I mean, I don't know. I'm curious kind of what you think of what he said, and where you'd be coming from, and then I can go in because I would rant for hours about this if it's me.
Okay, yeah. So I listened to the speech. That was the only thing I could find it recently. So I don't know if there was something else, but the one from like 4 days
Yep,
ago.
yep, the speech. Mhm.
So I listened to that earlier today, and in a vacuum, I didn't find it to be so problematic. But given the context of, like you said, other things he said, I could see why it would be received in such a manner. But the actual things that he said in this speech, um, I found to be, I found a few lines. Like at one point, he said, "What was it about?" He was like, "These are people who will never pay taxes,"
Never
and that
pay
was
taxes,
that
play
that was the
baseball, fall in love.
no, but it was taxes and have jobs were the first two things out of his
Yep,
mouth. And then he said play baseball.
yep,
Because then it was like his brain was like, oh, wait, I have to say things about them.
yep.
Like,
And he said, go on a date or use the toilet
yeah,
unassisted. And just
yeah,
just to clarify, like I've worked with hundreds of autistic clients, and I've quite literally had to change maybe 10 on full assist. Like I worked at a day service, we had 60
right,
clients, and I think there were 4 or 5 that were full assist. The idea that like many of them can't use the toilet unassisted is crazy. And like I've had bosses who are autistic. So like the idea they don't work or pay taxes,
right.
equally stupid.
I work with about 10 of them at my
Yeah.
theater that I work with. And I mean, between them, they range from, how much work they're able to do it. But, um, yeah, it seemed like with those comments, he was talking about
Do you
people
find the
who,
tone of his rhetoric to be dehumanizing at all?
in this speech specifically, I mean,
Mhm.
those two things I said, Yeah, like the whole they'll never be able to pay taxes because that makes it sound like you literally are just like we got to fix this because we got to get
Yeah.
money from these
Yeah.
people, which is
Hmm.
like super whack. But I think that's just like a politician. I
I
think
just like
pretty
it
much any of them
almost.
would say that. But go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, from how he was talking about it in this speech, it almost felt like to me like he might be conflating autism and Down syndrome, because like what he was describing as autistic is like so much more akin to like people with severe Down syndrome rather than people who are autistic, where it's like a spectrum, and most autistic people fall mild to low, like high functioning end of the
Right,
spectrum, to where like you could talk to them and outside of maybe, oh, they have like a weird quirk or something, not even
right.
know, right? And he's like saying, oh, they can't pay taxes or play baseball. Like there's the Special Olympics, like for one, like what are we
True.
even doing? I don't know. What do you think about him saying like it's an epidemic, talking about it like it's a disease? Because that's where I get the biggest frustration with it. Because for those who don't know, autism is just a sensory processing disorder, which just means the way they sense things, the way they feel things, and the way they process things, the way they think and experience stuff is just different than us. It's not like a disease or anything.
Yeah, so that was the part that I found to be curious, and I'm not a doctor, I'm not an expert, so I won't pretend to know the first thing about
Yeah.
any of it. But I will say I I'm curious to know what you and others think about the increase in data because that's the part that the way I received the speech was he was saying, look, we owe it to ourselves to continue to investigate this, to pretend like it's a closed book of
Yeah. Which is
oh,
crazy.
oh this is uh how should I
It's like
how to
settled
not
science.
yeah and not in the oh crap what's the word I'm looking for that he used toxin environmental that's the thing he was
Mhm.
talking about and basically why does autism where does autism come from
So,
essentially
yeah,
why autism and that part I don't think anybody should really have a problem with saying we want to continue to study why this happens.
I
That's
do.
fine.
I do. I absolutely do. One, mostly because like of all the vaccine autism things he spewed, which is like completely ascientific. But like second, like I want to really stress this for everyone. Like you don't catch autism. You're not born and you're fine. And then one day you have autism, or you take a vaccine and now you have autism. Like
Right.
it's all neuro, right? It's neurological.
But
And
why?
right. Well, the why is because we're unique, in my opinion. I think the idea that we would all process or feel things the same is more insane than the understanding that some people will think and feel things differently. And that's all that autism is. And that's what we've come to understand it as, is that there's not anything wrong with you if you're autistic. There's not anything like to fix. You just experience things, you feel things, you think about things differently. Now, if you want to say like, what could we do to, maybe we should study what we could do to make things easier for those on the very low end, low functioning end of the spectrum, who couldn't go to school, who probably need like ABA therapy their whole life. Like, what could we do to maybe make life easier for them? But like the idea that there is like something that causes people to be different, other than the fact that we are like one of the more unique in terms of our genetic compositions from human to human. Well, not like genetics, but in the different chemical compositions and things that make up us are unique from human to human. The idea that like some, and even furthermore, it's only different from the expectation that we have set in society. Like, because yeah, there is like the whole typical, neurotypical, right? This is what is typically seen in society. So we as a society have said, this is normal. So if you're not typical, you're now seen as abnormal, but that doesn't mean that there is something to fix. And in a lot of instances, there's things that autistic people can be a lot better at because of the way they are wired. Like, for instance, I used to work with a client who could take two puzzles. He would take two 100-piece puzzles. This is the craziest shit I've ever seen in my life. He would take two 100-piece puzzles, dump them on top of each other. The pieces would be upside down, like all over the place. And he would put the puzzles down and solve them both. And he could do it in like 30 to 45 minutes, have like two puzzles that were mixed together, put equally, because the way that they process things and see things and patterns and stuff, it's different. So I get like it's real frustrating when people talk about autism, and I don't mean you, I mean RFK, like when he talks about it like that, because it begs the insinuation that there's something wrong with these people.
Okay, but I would lightly push back because, like, I
Yeah.
work with a guy, for instance. I love him to death. He's the sweetest.
Mhm.
But like this man's, I love him. But he'll come up to me and he'll be like, "Hey, man, my birthday's on Monday," and I'm like, "Oh, that's awesome." Name redacted. Um,
Yep.
how old are you turning? Oh, I'm gonna be 20. Oh, that's sweet. Yeah, yeah. I'm looking forward to getting these stuff toy. Okay, cool, man. Yada yada yada. 2 minutes later, hey man, my birthday's on Monday. So like,
Hmm.
am I saying that that's a problem or like he's sick? No, but I'm saying, what is it about him where he repeats the same thing 30 times in one shift
Yeah,
where
it's
I don't?
hyperfixation, and that's like
And
that's a common side
hyperfix,
effect.
but
And if
why does
you
he hyperfixate? Is what I'm saying. And
Sure.
saying we are not allowed to ask why doesn't
A
really
lot
make
of it is
sense to me.
because it's like the dopamine release. So like what gives you a dopamine release isn't the same as him. For him, it could be as little as like a thought because of the way he processes thoughts. They could be a lot more vivid to him. So like when he as much as thinks of his birthday, he could be getting the feeling that you get when you're at your birthday, right? And
Sure.
if you're feeling that to the extreme and you're never really taught how to process those kinds of emotions, you might hyperfixate or you might do something like that. And that's where like ABA therapy, like what I do for a living, comes in,
Sure.
where we teach you how to handle these things. And for me, I just think that ABA should be taught. I think one, parents should be forced to get I like or in school, maybe you could go through ABA, like something to where like by the time you're a parent, you can understand like behavioral therapy for how common like we have children who are autistic, things like that. I don't get it. Same with like sign language, by the way. These are different debate though. But I would agree with you. Like when I'm making this point, I want to be clear. Like there are symptoms of autism that can be problematic, right? So we could talk about how to better address or structure society to keep those symptoms back. Like you said with the hyperfixation, if that was a person who had gone through ABA as a child and kind of learned how to process his emotions and be able to, hey, like it's not socially functional for you to repeat yourself 10 times to something, even if you are excited, you can internalize that. If he had learned that, it would have been better. So to me, it's like, what can we do as a society to set it up like that better? Not like, well, let's say that these are people who will never pay taxes, so we can
Yeah,
dehumanize them.
that part's unhinged, but I guess I'm more saying what is wrong with, because if we take like getting, my religious ideas
Yeah.
of the world out of
Mm-hmm.
it, just
Yep.
everything has to have an explanation
Mm-hmm.
if we're going from a materialist explanation of reality. So there's something, whether it's like chemicals, brain wiring, genetic code, there is some reason he does that and I do not.
Yep.
And investigating that, I don't think is immoral or problematic. It's just saying we just want to know more about why this happens to some people. And
Yep.
on that level, I thought that part of the speech was completely fine, where he was saying, look, if you look at these studies here, this study here, we're talking about a 300% increase. Why? Is it just random? Maybe it is.
Yeah.
It,
Well,
and to say it's the diagnosis thing, I find to be uh, pretty lacking in convincibility given all of the information that he presented.
no, hold on.
Granted,
Wait, no, hold on. No, because
I'm
I got to
receiving
stop you
it
there.
just in the speech and
Yeah,
nothing outside of that. So,
I have to respond to that there because it absolutely is because of how we diagnose autism, is why it's more common now to be diagnosed. Like for instance, I don't know if RFK Jr. does for sure, but I know Trump commonly parrots the 1 in 10,000. Like it used to be 1 in 10,000 children were diagnosed with autism in the 60s. Do you know why that is? For instance, do you know why it was that uncommon?
I mean,
Because
I know the, go
in
ahead.
the DSM-1, autism was classified as a rare form of schizophrenia that only adult males could have. Right. So like they're leaving out a lot of context of that. We have came to a better understanding of what autism is. Like, obviously, if you're going to say to have autism, you first have to be a male, you have to be an
Yeah.
adult, and you have to be schizophrenic. And then you have to meet all these other super rare criteria. Obviously, it's going to be really low. The DSM-3 is where we first started classifying autism as a separate thing, which was in the 70s. And the numbers were a lot lower then, albeit we now do more. I think it was closer to 1 in 100, a little under there. Don't quote me specifically. But in the 70s, when we started classifying it as its own thing, the diagnosis, it was more common. Now we have a lot more criteria in terms of how we can depict this out, where again, we also understand that it's a spectrum. We understand things like you can just live an everyday life and be autistic, and there can be like just little quirks that you have.
And yeah, I mean, I don't remember the specifics that he said in the speech, but I
One thing
know
he said
that.
was that because young people are getting diagnosed, but not old people. Is that something that you thought was a credible point that he brought up?
Wait, say that one more time.
One point, and I'm not saying that you were, but you said that he brought up a couple reasons. One of the reasons he mentioned in the speech, he said, was that we're only seeing a spike in diagnosis for young people, but we're not seeing it in old people. So that's proof that
Oh,
is that something that you were quoting, or was it
I
other?
mean, that's something additional, I guess. But no, I was more talking about, I forget which studies he cited, but I know that the ones that he's talking about wouldn't have been that DSM-1 situation, because he was talking about a study that went through 180,000 children, and that they went through it again to make sure that they didn't miss any people who had autism, and only found one person that they missed. And he cited a few that were like that and showed that this state did one, this state did one, and they all came to the same of like one in, I forget what it was. I think it was like 1 in 30 or something. I don't remember,
Yeah.
but
Well,
something like that. And now it's something like 350 times those numbers, meaning that either they really messed up in their first one,
hmm.
or there's an increase.
So
And
I would
maybe
have to
there's
look. Yeah, I'd have to
both.
look at the studies to be sure that they were quoting after the DSM. But even if like accepting that's true, the need for special education services have went down, and then mental illness as a whole has went down. So like what you can kind of extrapolate from that is that like one, there can't be an epidemic of mental illness if it's dropping, and that two, if special education services have gone down, the severity of mental illness, including autism, because like the most common mental illness diagnosis that is in school would be autism. Like typically, if you have Down syndrome, you're in a clinic. If you have like schizo, like even if you have like a very serious mental illness, you're not going to be in school. But autism, typically, you get phased into school, and special education services have gone down since the application of them. So like, I don't know, saying like, yeah, we're getting more diagnoses, but that's because we're understanding that there are really like not severe cases that we wouldn't have diagnosed 30 years ago that we are now. But I do have a question that I wanted to pose to you before we end it, just to kind of maybe where I think we might have common ground. Do you think that if someone had autism, if they were diagnosed with autism, but it didn't hinder their life in any way, they were able to work a job, have a relationship, friends, all of that, do you think that's a problem?
A problem. What do you mean a problem?
Like, would you just
Problem
say
for
them
who?
having, like, would you say them having autism is a problem or like an issue or something that needs addressed if it's not affecting their life in any way?
No,
Okay.
not even
Okay.
sort
Yeah.
of.
Cool.
No,
Then
I
I
don't
would say
even.
we probably mostly agree.
Yeah, I wouldn't even if it is. I mean, a problem. Only if it's a problem to, like, if they think it's a problem,
Yeah.
I
Well,
guess.
most people who are neurodivergent just can live everyday life. So that's like my
Yeah,
biggest
I
thing
mean,
to
like
it.
I have different from autism, obviously, but I have like ADHD
Yeah.
pretty
Yep.
freaking
Me too.
badly.
Yeah.
And like, is it a problem? Only insofar as like I allow it to be one.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
like, I know I have ADHD. So for like, for instance, I know, okay, if I got a doctor's appointment at 12, I need to leave at like 11 because even
Would
if it's
you
20 minutes away, because I'm going to dilly dally, get distracted. And you just have to put in systems. So like, is it a
yeah.
problem? Yeah. But like,
Would you take offense if like on a national level it was being pushed that like you were that way because there was something wrong with you and that people like you could never work or pay taxes? Would you feel
oh, I mean,
dehumanized?
if they were telling me I can't, the pay taxes thing is so unhinged.
It is unhinged.
Just that it was the first words out of his mouth are hilarious. And I'll give him the benefit of the doubt that he was trying to
You shouldn't.
appeal to those types of people who would receive that and be like, yes, we need more taxpayers.
Yeah.
But the this is a problem. I forget how you worded it at the beginning. I wouldn't necessarily take offense to, because like when I was diagnosed, I was told, which they're now kind of phasing out this concept, but I was told, oh, you have a chemical imbalance.
Hmm.
You got to take these pills to get to balance
Yeah.
or whatever. And like that's what I was told, and I just thought, okay. So that
Mhm.
part doesn't bother me, but saying like, yeah, you'll never have a job, you'll never have a girlfriend, that's crazy and
It's
unhinged,
unhinged.
because I've literally met married autistic people.
Yep.
I
I
like I
met
said, I'm
bosses.
friends with like
Yep.
so many of them. So,
I've
uh,
helped them as an employee. I've helped them set up for day. I literally helped a client that was nervous, like the most human thing ever, that was nervous
yeah,
about asking a girl on a date. I
right.
gave them tips on how to ask her, then like helped them
Mhm.
pick out an outfit, like all of that, you know. And my last thing I want to put on this is what you said about the research. I guess if you're doing it right, like I don't have a problem with research on autism, right? My biggest thing is one, the rhetoric, and two, the person, and I wish I could remember his name, but the person that RFK is tasking to do this research is someone who has pushed that vaccines cause autism,
Is it
which
the guy who spoke with
he
him?
did speak. Yeah, I can't remember.
Walter something?
I think so. Yeah, I don't want to get it wrong. You know what I mean? Send the
Yeah.
angry mob after it.
Right.
But and
Some
I
random guy named Walter's like,
yeah,
no.
you know, not me. Yeah, no, but and that is like one of the most debunked things in medical science, like medical research, that if you push that vaccines cause autism, you instantly
Yeah, I think
shouldn't be
that's
taken
laughable.
serious.
I think that's
Which by the
laughable.
way, RFK Jr. has pushed, and he would cite
Yeah,
a list of 100 studies that confirmed it, and it was a list of 100 studies that were debunked.
yeah, like I said, given the context of RFK, I see why the speech is problematic, but I think the actual words minus the really weird, obviously dehumanizing language,
Yeah.
but like just the idea of, hey, the numbers were this, now they're this, we're gonna look into this. I think that's pretty
Mhm.
standard. Like that seems normal to me. And I just again, I'm not into this world. I mean, my brother does the same thing that you do. That's his career as well.
Mhm.
But I don't. I mean, he tells us some stories, but other than
Yeah.
that, I don't know anything about it. I just know autistic people in my life and talk to them. But um, to my ears, on the surface, just on a plausibility level,
Mhm.
we just didn't diagnose enough. Versus there's an actual increase. I just don't find this one to sound plausible. It just doesn't sound real. It might be true. You might be
Mhm.
right.
Mhm.
It just sounds fake to me. It sounds like cope. Like it just sounds like there's no way it's
Have you ever
that
read the
off.
DSM?
No, like I said, I don't know anything about this. I'm
Mhm.
just saying, just to a lay person's ears, oh, we just misdiagnosed by 300% versus, hey, maybe it's increasing. Because something else he said that was interesting, um, which I don't know the numbers on. I was just going, that's interesting. When I heard it, I don't know if it's true. Was he was mentioning, and I know I have met a few elderly autistic people, but compared to younger ones, he is correct. I know
Well,
probably
there's
12
a
to 1
yeah, there's a
autistic kids. And why is that? Why
well,
aren't
yeah, I
the
can
baby
there's a
boomers
very
autistic?
very
Why
easy
aren't
clinical
the
reason for that.
they killed them?
Yeah, yeah, they're all dead. No, no. One, it's harder to get an evaluation as an adult. That's like just dead set. Like it's just known. It's a lot harder for a doctor to not attribute that to ADHD or something. More likely, and a lot of
Sure.
a reason for that is one of the diagnosing criteria for autism is that it has to have like interfered in your childhood life specifically, like it had to have hindered you in your childhood. So as an adult, you would also be having to tell your doctor that this is something you struggled with as a child. I think anyone with common sense, you could see how that is going to like lower the amount of people who are going to get the evaluation. And then there is, and this is something I would admit to from having worked at a clinic and having seen these evaluations, there is a huge problem with adults being diagnosed. And I think this is my personal opinion. I think some of it has to do with just the psychology of like when you're an adult, you can understand the fact you're being evaluated. So it's not going to be your normal behavior. You're going to like, even if you don't realize you're going to kind of change your behavior. Whereas kids, it's as simple as like, hey, we're going to play with these toys and this, and you're kind of just observing them in their natural habitat, natural environment, right? Like, I mean, a lot of the diagnosing is literally in natural environment, NET. But yeah, so there's just a lot of things and steps that make it harder for adults.
Yeah, and to be honest, I don't know if he was talking about data or not. I just took it as more of like in my own experiences in life.
Mhm.
Granted, maybe that's just not the circles I run in, but like I can count on one hand the amount of autistic adults I've met in my life.
That told
I
you.
can that I can perceive is a better
Mhm.
way to put it, rather than
Well,
tell me.
that's my
That I,
point. That's my
well,
point.
sure, but he was talking about obviously by his rhetoric, he seems to be focused on the low function,
Yeah.
the people who are I I don't know if
I
suffering
just
it
think he
sounds
thinks all of
offensive.
them are low function. That's what I think. That's what I'm saying.
Maybe he does, but obviously I don't. I've
Yeah,
met them.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No,
I
yeah,
know
yeah.
many of them
I don't mean to
who are
attribute your
not
beliefs to you.
like but when it comes to specifically the low functioning ones, I couldn't count the amount of people, probably like 30 or under, I'll say, that I've met over
Mhm.
the years, but I could count adults. And I don't know if
Mhm.
that's premature. I don't know if there's any
Yeah.
connections with other
Well, I
sicknesses or premature deaths or anything, but and maybe it's just like in the circles I run in. But I did find that to be. I'm just saying to a layperson's ears who doesn't know anything,
yeah.
I found his speech to be convincing in the sense that, hey, we should probably look into this. There might be something afoot, and we owe it to ourselves to at least try. And I
Yeah.
don't see anything wrong with investigating. Like the truth
So
has nothing to hide. So
yeah.
let's just look
So
into it.
the last thing I'll say before we go on, so we're not on this topic for
Yeah,
3 hours, is that I was also a DSP where you work with adults in group homes for the longest time. And like in my small town, there's hundreds of adults with
gotcha.
diagnoses. So I would imagine it's pretty common everywhere. But yeah, to move on, Abrego Garcia, I'm curious also your thoughts on this. I know we don't disagree too much on immigration, maybe just a little here and there. So might not be as long as the autism segment, but he was wrongfully deported in that the Trump administration has admitted that they deported him sooner than he was supposed to. He had had a previous order of removal, but he had also had an order of withholding from El
Yep.
Salvador. He had regular meetings with DHS. So there's kind of like conflicts of like, was it justified deportation or not? Either way, I think the mistake in sending him to where he shouldn't have been makes it kind of unreasonable. I'm curious though, just what you think about that, the fact that he was on the flight that was supposed to be turned around and wasn't, just the whole situation kind of, before I get into my line of questioning for you.
Yeah, we're probably gonna mostly agree this is an abomination.
Mm,
Uh,
yeah.
you can't be deporting people when there's a stay order to not deport people.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, like you said, they are chalking it up to an administrative error, and honestly, with the incompetency of the U.S. government, that doesn't really surprise me all that much.
Mhm.
Um, Very upsetting to hear from the El Salvadorian president that he's not going to do anything either. And so it really seems like the guy's just stuck.
Yeah.
Like there's the US is like, well, he's not in foreign soil, so we can't do anything. And then the foreign soil is like, well, we're not going to do anything either. So it's
Yeah.
like, okay, well
So
then what?
you did support the order to bring him back too?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
apparently as far as I can tell, I mean, there's like whispers of him like maybe having some connections, but nothing like concrete about him having any gang
Uh,
connections. It's just speculation, like
So it's
at
a double
best.
hearsay testimony, which this
Yeah,
is why it's funny for me that MAGA is like so dead set that, oh, this is a gangbanger, because it's a detective who was telling a judge from hearing from an informant, right? So an
yeah,
informant
yeah,
told a detective who told a
yeah.
judge, and it's like, you're gonna believe that testimony, but we can't believe E. Jean Carroll's testimony and the witness testimony and the
Did you
corroborative testimony.
did
And
you hear some of the reasons too? They were like, I was listening and
yeah,
they were like,
Chicago Bulls hat in the
Chicago
hoodie.
Bulls. Yeah, yeah. I was like,
Racism at its
what?
finest, bro.
I was
Racism at
like,
its finest, dog. They
I
saw
was
a
like,
black guy in a Chicago Bulls hat and said gang member. Like, you can't tell me that's not
I
racism.
was like, what are you talking about? I was like, is that their calling card? Like, is this known information?
Yeah,
Only if
did you
you're in the stands at a Chicago Bulls show, be prepared to be arrested, I
you're
guess.
done for if you like the
Like,
Bulls. Jordan's dead, bitch. Like LeBron's the GOAT. You're going to jail.
it's so
Did
insane.
you
That's
see
why I was like,
Trump's
what a
post where
joke.
he posted an altered photo of this man's hand with MS-14 on them?
Yeah, 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 yeah. The tattoo thing.
Also fucking crazy that
Yeah,
he would do
yeah.
that.
This whole yeah, it's oh my gosh, it's bad. It's real bad.
It's all insane. So I'm glad
And
we
I
agree on
don't
how we
know
line up.
what can be done for the poor guy because
At this point, yeah.
like I mean, you might know more. You probably studied it more. Is he like awaiting a trial? Like, what is a sentence? Does he have a certain sentencing? Like, is he ever going to be let out, or like what?
No,
What?
no. So he was sent without allegation of a crime.
Right,
So he's going to be held probably in the El Salvadorian prison as a criminal for breaking the U.S. immigration code, like unlawful immigration, which is kind of insane because, well, that's a civil offense. It's akin to a
right.
speeding ticket. First off, like your first offense, and this is again why I like when MAGA will call undocumented immigrants illegals. Like the first time you enter this country without documentation, is literally a civil offense. It's just like a speeding ticket. It's the reentry that becomes a felony. But that aside, he's literally about to get sent to an El Salvadorian prison for that, where more inmates die than leave that prison. Like that is a statistical fact there. So he's probably going to do life there. Probably going to, I mean, there's no telling, he could walk free. Either way, he had a wife. He had 3 children here. He's been here for 14 years. He worked a job on the books. He met with DHS. Like, I don't know. I don't get it. I thought we might agree. I wanted to ask you, I guess, kind of a larger question related to it. Do you think that undocumented migrants that haven't committed a crime or been alleged to have committed a crime should be deported? Or are you against it in this scenario because of the order of withholding?
So I think it depends on the situation. So should be probably in the sense of like just the law calls for it as in that way. Do I agree with that law?
Well,
That's
the
like a
law calls that they could be, not should be, but yeah.
okay. Well then, me personally, I don't have any beef with undocumented immigrants at
Mhm.
all, besides obviously the criminal ones, and not the whole, well, they're undocumented, so they're all
Yeah,
criminals.
yeah,
Not that. I mean like actual
yeah.
gangbangers
I agree. Me
or,
too. Yeah,
but at that point, like I have a problem with all criminals.
yeah.
So
Hmm.
that's not an immigrant problem. That's just a criminal things. But where my heartstrings are pulled, and as a Catholic and stuff, trying to care about people when they have kids who are here, or uh, they're illegal because they were brought here when they were really young.
Hmm.
I find it hard to have any reasonable argument saying ship them back. Now, if you're talking about some dude who got here January of 2025 and we find out in like March of 2025 and we catch it quick and it's not like 20 years of roots and blah blah blah, then like sure, send that guy back, get in line, do it the right way, whatever. He Not that much harm is done. We're not uprooting anybody's lives. It's not destroying community. It's just a guy who's been here for a few months.
Yeah,
Sure.
I don't.
But
I would, that's where we probably disagree a little, because I think the problem with this is it speaks to what enables it, which is a larger problem, which is that we do deport undocumented migrants who have committed no crimes. That because we often do, and it opens the door for people like Abrego Garcia, like I can't remember his name, something Hernandez, the gay hairdresser that was also
mhm,
deported. He fled persecution. These people to be deported all because they can be, right? Where for me, I don't think there's any reason you can give for deporting an undocumented immigrant that hasn't committed a crime, that wouldn't be better solved by offering them a pathway to residency or citizenship, right? Because one, deportation
right,
is also going to cost more money. It's like, I think 14 grand per person is like the average to deport someone, which is a lot. Like, I mean, it's not like a lot of money as the government is concerned, but I mean, that's tax money, right? We're spending. And if we're talking how Trump is planning millions, 14,000 a person, we're talking billions of dollars, right? Like, so this isn't a cheap thing to do. If you want to know who they are, residency and or citizenship does that as well. If you want them to be able to pay taxes and contribute, citizenship or residency does that as well. And I mean, many undocumented immigrants pay into like Social Security and healthcare anyway.
right. And this is not funny, but sort of on topic, going back to Pope Francis, obviously in recent months before his health problems, him and the U.S. College of Bishops were fighting pretty hard against the Trump administration and J.D. Vance about immigration, and I find it a very troubling topic to deal with because I I understand the idea of, well, every country has its limits. We can't have, we're at 333 million or whatever. Is 720 million too many people to live in America? Is 1 billion? I don't know what the limit is versus, and how much natural birth, as in born here, first come, first serve. Like, I'm here, my kids should probably be allowed to live here before somebody else is from another country, at least a little bit of an edge just because they were born here. But at the same time, as a humanist and somebody who cares about people, like there's a reason they're coming here. It's usually because it's a better situation for them, and I want people to be in a better situation, or at least they think it's going to be a better situation for them. At least they have hope of it, and so yeah, I find it hard to. I don't envy anybody who's in charge of this stuff. I guess is the easiest way to say it because I definitely understand why people are like, well, look, man, we have a legal way to do this. Just do the legal way. In a vacuum, that sounds great, but
Do you
that's
find
not
out
the real
about the legal
world.
way and how the legal way is
Yes,
broken and
and why is the legal way broken, and what does it need to be like? And maybe like a 2 week program is probably too quick, but a 2 year program might be
yeah,
more
that's the
reasonable.
problem is
You know,
we incentivize immigrants to
yeah,
come
by making
here
it a 15
undocumented.
year freaking like I
Yeah.
had neighbors growing up who had been there literally for about a decade, and I think like right before they moved like to another city. They had just finally gotten to like the end of getting their citizenship, and it's like, why
Mhm.
does it take 10 years? Like,
Yeah.
I don't really
Yep.
understand
So
what boxes need to be checked
so then here's the
besides
question. Yeah.
education.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what
Mhm.
else we're waiting for.
Here's the question I'll ask you then. So then do you think that Kamala Harris was a better candidate for immigration specifically than Donald Trump, since she was the only one with a plan to address the system and the backlogs and put in more judges and such?
I mean, without knowing the exact ins and outs, I can be willing to concede based off of what you've said there.
The
That sounds
bipartisan
like a
border deal.
better,
The
yeah,
bipartisan
that
border deal would have
sounds
added judges and
sounds like a better situation. But like I said, I really just feel like it should be as simple as people want to move here. We have some way of mathematically factoring in how like what our capacity is or whatever.
yeah.
And if we have room, then there you go. You
I
can come
completely
in.
agree with you. I think
Like,
that
why does it need to be any more complicated than that?
I completely agree. I think the only limits should be economic limits in terms of like if we're talking about stopping immigration, it should only be like, okay, this is going to economically harm us.
Yeah.
Which is why like where a lot of people's reasonings doesn't make sense to me. They seem to just want to deport immigrants for sake of them being immigrants.
Well, yeah. Now, I mean, my biggest understanding of why people are anti-immigration, and not like the middle of the road repeat the talking points people who don't know anything. I
Yeah.
mean the ones who have strong stances,
Yeah.
is that they're just racist. Like, to be
Yeah.
honest with you,
Mhm.
they just want to try to make America white again.
Do you blame
And
Trump for
I'm
that?
not I don't blame Trump for that, but I don't think he's helped it at all.
Do you
I
think
think
he's
that
caused it at all?
existed in people's hearts before.
Do you think more than 0% of it can be attributed to Trump?
uh I think the more than 0% of the vocalization of it, yes.
Okay.
But I don't think like
Yeah,
Trump
no,
is
I would
making
agree.
these people
Yeah,
believe these
I would
things. Like,
agree.
I
Yeah.
think that they're already racist jerks
Well, hmm,
to some
maybe
degree.
maybe a little bit. Like people, my pushback would be like people who only watch like Fox News, older people who are also susceptible to propaganda, who just hear Trump commonly say they're emptying
Well,
their prisons and mental
yeah, yeah,
asylums,
yeah.
and
I'm not even really like those are more of the brainwashed, don't know anything. I'm talking about
oh, you mean specifically? Okay,
mostly the people I'm talking about don't even like Trump because he's too much
yeah,
of a lib.
yeah,
They're so right wing and racist that I mean they hate Trump and JD Vance, and they even think Nick Fuentes is too far
yeah. That's
left for
crazy.
them now. Like, these are the people who come after me on Twitter for being daring to have mixed children. But
God,
they just want to deport everyone who's not white because the white race is being attacked and killed
yeah,
systematic. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, nobody has that opinion.
literally,
Nobody's trying to get
yeah,
rid of white people. Literally nobody cares.
yeah.
Nobody
No.
cares.
It's
You guys aren't that special. Like, we don't care enough.
it is a phenomena. It's a social phenomena that most people who aren't victims in a situation really want to be. And with
Hmm.
white people, you see that a lot. They're not victims of racism, at least on like a mass level. I'm sure,
Right,
obviously,
right.
on an
Individual level,
individual
different
level, yeah,
story.
my mom used to call people crackers. You know what I mean? Like, so on an individual level, but there's no like systemic racism against
Right.
black people. So they really want to pretend that anything is so they can meet that barrier. I do want to say, quick side note, you really chose
Yeah.
to run life on hard mode, huh? Like mixed children, black conservative,
I
black
know.
Catholic.
I know.
Yeah,
I know. Good thing I'm not gay, or else
right. Yeah,
it's
that'd be it, right? Take it down the wall.
yeah.
Yeah, no. So, I guess did you have anything else you wanted to add on?
No, no,
Yeah.
no.
So, because we agreed
Let's
there, so we got to get
get
back
into
to
abortion real quick.
yeah, to disagree, and we'll make it kind of quick because, like I said, we have hashed it out before.
Yeah.
You can start, or I guess here I'll start. I always let you start. Abortion. I am pro-choice. I think that it is insane to restrict rights of a person for a non-person. I don't consider humans to be a person, at least colloquially. I don't care what word you use, but if we're talking like, being strict in our definitions, I wouldn't consider a fetus to be a person. I think personhood, the ability to deploy a unique conscious experience, the fact that we have past, future, present experiences that we can cling on to, our memories, our feelings, like this combination of things that we know as consciousness, essentially, and the ability to deploy that in like the unique manner that humans do. Like I am vegetarian, but I don't on a mass level care if people don't harm animals or eat animals or whatever. So for me, I would never restrict the rights of a person for what I would consider a non-person. That would be like one main principle. Schwa knows most of my arguments. I'll let him lay his out, and then we'll butt heads for a second.
Well, quickly, I think we found our next week's debate.
Yeah,
I don't, maybe I knew you were a vegetarian, but for some reason I think I forgot. So we should
yeah.
discuss that at some point. But yeah, and then my stance, I'm pro-life, but with the caveat of I live in the real world, and so from a political standpoint, I'm willing to make concessions to bring about some goods rather than none goods.
What are those
Um,
concessions?
and
Those
so
competing
I'm a
concessions?
fan of oh, I'm gonna forget her name. The Nikki. Okay, I was like Nancy Haley, Nikki Haley,
Yeah.
who was running and unfortunately got knocked up by freaking Trump. I liked what she was saying. Of I think she wanted to do a 12-week, and so that's about 3 months into a pregnancy. It's about 1/3 of the way there. I'm also willing to blanketly sign a like a 20-week ban. I think they say that brain activity on the very early ends is about 19, 20 weeks, but more typically about 22 weeks. The streamer Destiny, that's kind of where he puts his cutoff. If people are cool with that, I would take it as a gigantic pro-life and political win to make that the law of the land fit all 50 states, and then from there continue to work back from there to try to get that to a 12-week, and then make abortion unthinkable, and then more people are willing to do an 8-week and a heartbeat, and then next thing you know, it's banned everywhere. So I'm willing to start with something rather than nothing, where a
Yeah.
lot of my pro-life people would be like, it's all or nothing. So
Yeah, so I guess not on the same of walking it back to ending up getting it to 4 weeks, but I would probably also be comfortable with like if we had a 20-week ban, I don't know if I would support banning it on the federal level, but I wouldn't be that opposed if it was 20 weeks because for me, where I would place moral considerations on a fetus probably fall after. I would probably the window would be 20 to 24 weeks, so you would probably set it at 20 weeks to
be
hinder out
safe.
any of the
Yeah.
lower end cases. So that would be like not a, you want to get a big argument from me there. My problem with it is I definitely think medical necessity should always be allowed. I think that there should be exceptions for things like rape and incest. And I think that if you ban it on a federal level, at least if you don't explicitly state these things very clearly, it's going to stop some women from being able to get those procedures. My example of that would be how you already see it on the state level, where women who are like bleeding out in parking lots can't get their procedure because the states are like, well, our laws are written in a way that we don't know if you can do it or not. And that's the biggest thing for me is laws are interpreted. So like you have to think not just of what the law, because a lot of people when arguing that will say, well, the law is written in a way that if they're dying, you actually can and did it. Well, if the law is written in a way that isn't interpreted by the hospitals to mean we can't operate on you and they're rejecting people, the law caused that.
Yeah, and that could be stupidity on the law writers'
Yes.
part of
Yeah.
how they wrote it,
Yep.
or that could be stupidity on the people who just can't understand
Which,
what the
yeah,
law
which
says.
that's where I would
But
push back. That's where I would push back on banning it on the federal level at any point. I would be more comfortable if there was like a medical standard that wasn't mandated by any like government that was like, okay, as doctors, we won't do it after 20 weeks or something of the sort if it's not, medically necessary or whatever. Cause I think the doctors and the families alone should be making that decision.
so then, in your mind, would it be like if you are a doctor and you go past that, your like medical licenses are revoked, or like how would that
I think that
be
because
enforced
after
in any
once
way?
a fetus is viable, they typically just induce birth, right? And like even if you abort a fetus, you have to give birth to it. So I would think that you should after that point you would just induce birth. I think that if you intentionally killed the fetus after that, that, I mean, you could even be charged with murder or whatever. I mean,
Well,
maybe there should be a lesser charge or something of it, but
this is
you could
interesting.
get, I think that you could. I wouldn't morally, again, this is where it kind of gets, legal and morals. I don't know if I would legally support setting up a law, but the moral application, I think it could be akin to, there could be some sort of charge for at least inducing harm on the fetus after it has the qualifications for a person, unjustifiably, that is.
Sure, and I mean, obviously, we disagree about qualifications for a person and whatnot. And further disagreement would be that, which we discussed, and people, you should link it or something,
Yeah, I
our
will.
full debate. But I don't believe, and neither do many other doctors, that there are medical situations in which you wouldn't just induce labor. There is no situation where you induce labor and also must kill the baby. It's just induce labor. There's no need to murder the baby ever, because that
Well,
doesn't
I'm
have
curious
any life saving abilities.
in a hypothetical where we knew that like birthing a live baby, and I know there's different I am not a doctor enough to explain. I know there's different physical differences on how the baby will go through your body when you birth it. Would you, like, in a situation, a hypothetical where the mom knew if she birthed the baby alive that she would die, do you think she ought to? Or do you think that it is morally permissible for her
Oh,
not to?
like an actual scenario
Like, yeah, well, like, painting a
where,
hypothetical
yeah,
where
yeah, yeah, where
she
she
knows
will die
100% she will die
if
if
she
she
gives
births the
birth to
baby
this
alive.
baby,
Is it morally permissible?
and for some reason we can't do a C-section. I'm assuming
Yeah, like it's
she
like
has to give birth to it.
yeah, yeah.
Then yeah, I think it's morally permissible, and
Okay.
I think the vast majority of pro-lifers would agree at that point, because then it's a
I don't know about that. Not the big ones at least. Yeah,
I think they would, because it's just life. Somebody's dying.
for
It's
me, that's
just
the
life for
basis of
life.
medical necessity is that there's a lot of things for, and where we would disagree, I think is just where we draw that line. You would say probably that it would be in the hypothetical where they absolutely know. I would say that any chance of your life, or any severe chance of your life that's higher than the typical you could expect from a birth, would warrant you probably ending the life of the baby. Like, let's say, oh, there's always the 5% chance, well, if you had a 20% chance of dying, I would say that that is probably warrants you ending the pregnancy if you want. I don't think that you should be forced to put invalidate your own human rights, but then put your life at risk for another being. And I think it's your right of bodily autonomy to end that harm. And it is just an unfortunate consequence that comes in ending the life of a fetus in many circumstances.
Yeah, our main disagreement here is that I don't think that scenario exists. I don't think that's a real thing.
Do you
I
think it's
think
immoral to kill a fetus before it has consciousness?
1000%. Of course I do.
What do you think gives an act morality or immorality? Like, what do you think makes an act moral?
um, what makes an act moral?
Yeah. Either moral or just gives it morality.
Yeah. Um, well, how to best answer this?
Not to get you into what is epistemology or whatever real quick.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm trying to answer it without
For me, it would
going
be
into religion.
yeah. For me, it would be like whether that act is, well, one would be intent and then actually what happened, outcome, like intent and outcome, but both equally benefit and harm, right? Positive and negative. Was your intention, was it like to help or hurt? And then was the outcome, did it help or hurt? And I think that those two things weighed together would give the morality. And I think that then if you can't help or hurt something, that I don't think you can apply to morality to it. And I think that a fetus that doesn't experience consciousness and can't like have the experiences like that, I don't think you can harm or help it.
Yeah, so I mean,
So
I
I
would
would consider
say
it amoral. So I wouldn't consider
you
it
you
murder.
can definitely hurt a fetus because it has pain receptors way before 20 weeks.
Well,
So
and what we
you
know
can
is
definitely
pain.
hurt it.
It doesn't
But
have the consciousness to understand pain as pain. It would just be a feeling. You
I
couldn't
mean,
even
sure,
know, you wouldn't even know if it would negatively experience that feeling. It wouldn't even know what a negative experience would be, right?
it
It would
may
just be
not
a
know, but
feeling. It would
it,
just be
it
a feeling.
there's a movie that came out recently called Novocaine, where a dude can't feel pain, but him putting his hand into a fire will still give him burn. So
Yeah.
it doesn't matter if you know you're getting hurt or if you can even feel the hurt.
Hmm.
It's just if the hurt is occurring.
I don't know if I
Um,
believe that. You think you're
that
in pain? If something hits you and you're not hurt, but
if I can't feel pain because my nerve endings are just
yeah,
destroyed,
yeah.
but I stick my hand on an oven and I pull it away and my flesh is melted, I
If you
think I'm
can't,
still hurt.
well, if you can't feel pain and somebody punches you in the face, did they hurt you?
Yeah, they can knock out my teeth, they can knock out my
But they
jaw.
don't? Like nothing, no physical, like they didn't physically harm you, but
They
like,
did.
well, that's what I mean.
They're
Like if they, I mean, like if there's not like they don't bruise you, they don't break your jaw, they don't knock your tooth out. All you feel is the feeling of getting hit, but you don't feel pain. Like how is that? How does that hurt you? It's
I
just
mean,
a
that's a
feeling.
really philosophical question, I
Right. But
guess,
then
but
even more so, I would say like if you don't have the experience to understand pain or understand the opposite of pain, I don't think that
yeah, I
you
mean,
take
I'm
that
not sure
feeling to be
that
pain or positive or negative.
yeah, I mean, like I have a 3-month-old baby, and I don't think that that baby can understand it either because you don't actually
Really? I think it would. I think if you did something
babies don't
painful,
aren't conscious until 4 months old. So a
if
newborn baby is not even conscious.
that's not true. And if you did
It's true.
something,
I look it
I guess
up.
it depends on what you're qualifying consciousness as, which is really arbitrary. In my standards of consciousness, or I guess it would be conscious. But if you pinched your baby or did something to cause it pain, it would cry, right? I think it would understand it as a negative experience.
It wouldn't understand anything. It has no thoughts, head empty. It's
It
just
would be a
there.
negative. You don't think it would be a negative experience if you pinched your
I
baby?
don't think. I don't.
If you did
I
something
don't.
to your baby to hurt it, you
The
don't think it would
jury
be a negative
is out
experience?
on whether that baby is having experiences.
But your answer would be
The current
you. What do
scientific
you think though?
yeah, I think whatever the kind yeah, whatever the current scientific
Hmm.
data tells me. And as of right now, they don't think that babies have experience or know anything or have whatever until about 4 months. They're just nothing, head empty.
Yeah, I
It's a
think it would be a negative
mysterious. We don't have
experience, and I
a
think that it's backed by negative reactions, right? When you have a negative response to something, I think you can elicit from that that they're
respond to
having a negative
stimuli.
experience.
Dude with just a brainstem will
Well,
respond to
yeah, but if
pain.
you tickled
So
your baby,
there
if you
doesn't need to
tickled your
be
baby, the response to the stimuli would be positive, right? It would laugh, or I guess if it doesn't get
well,
tickling, then it would cry. But if
yeah,
it was,
but that the positive part is arbitrary. We made that up. We decided that laughing and giggling is a good thing, but it's just a thing.
well,
That
no,
would be amoral.
it's
It's not a
attached to
good,
like it's attached to like a dopamine release, which I guess you could say like
but
the
we're just
label of good.
arbitrarily, yeah, we're
The
just saying that
label
that's
is
good.
arbitrary, but I think if we're talking about like the innate feeling of good and bad, like positive or negative, dopamine elicits a positive feeling, a positive experience, a positive reaction and response. In many cases, I guess if you're typical, right?
It's
There's
just
always like the
question begging. I think you can get dopamine from doing a crack cocaine too, but it doesn't make it a good experience.
well, if we're talking about the experience in itself, it doesn't make it a good choice. Yeah, because of the harm it can cause. But the experience itself would be positive objectively. If you did crack and it released dopamine and you felt good, it would objectively be a positive experience, would it not? It would just be a bad choice. I think that's what you're trying to say. Because there's
Yeah, I
multiple
think we're
consequences
mincing
in the way.
over words. I would take problem calling it a positive experience to do
Just
crack
I
cocaine,
just
but
what do you think? I guess I know we got to end because we're going a little over.
sure.
What do you think a positive experience, like what would you define a positive experience as?
Experiences that align with our not character, our what we are, our being. I know that's a philosophical
Yeah.
vagary that we would have to dig
And you would
into, but
define that
essentially,
as something with probably through spiritual reasoning, right?
well, natural law. I would say, things that are this cup, this straw is meant for your sipping out of it, and so that's
Natural
a
law, so
positive.
like law that is seen in nature.
As in, like I said, this straw is designed for liquid to go up, suck it. That's what it's made for. That's a positive way to use it. This is a good straw
What do you think crack
if
was
stuff
made for? It
comes,
was made for recreational use.
well, I think crack was made to probably abuse the black population. But yeah, I would just say I would have trouble calling things that are bad for us positive experiences just because
I think that's kind
we
of
trick ourselves into thinking that
no,
it is
come
such.
on. I think that is the
But
weirdest bullet to knock
we're
off.
way off of abortion.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
I'm just saying, I don't think that you could constitute abortion as murder because I don't think that there is a morality that can be placed on killing something that can't experience anything.
yeah, and I think
The
obviously
same
abortion
reason,
is murder because killing a person is
For me,
the
it's the same reason we don't charge
definition
people
of murder.
with murder who are on end of life care, right? Is because you can't apply at the point that you're brain dead. If you're just kept alive by a machine or whatever, there's no morality to really apply to that action. I mean, once your
No,
brain,
I mean, if somebody's on end of life care and some dude is like sneaks in with a hockey mask and unplugs them, we should absolutely throw that person in jail.
but I mean, no, if that person is their wife and is just like that person had never said anything to them about if they were on end of life care,
They have power of attorney. It's not an applicable situation. But if a
there is,
rando did it, you would agree we should throw that person in jail, right? If they just
well,
sneak in and start unplugging people.
yeah, yes.
So there is something wrong with
No, no. Well, if it's a random, yeah, because I think that there's
it.
like I mean I think that when you're talking about family, I think we understand though that there's a bit of like
But there's
kinship.
power of attorney there. So it's as if the
The
guy
power of
who's
attorney typically falls to like like if you don't have one, it fall like when my dad was on that, it fell to my mom and they never really spoke about it. And she just ended up being it. So like I'm almost
yeah,
positive
yeah.
it just
That's what
falls to the
no, it
family
does. It does.
if you've
That's what
never
I'm
said
saying.
that. So
So
I'm
I'm
just saying
saying that's a
which is arbitrary, right? That's something we
well, no,
created.
that's
It doesn't, there's no natural law of power of attorney. And I thought that that's where you apply the
well,
morality. So how how does it become moral because of something that isn't natural law?
well,
If
we would
that's what you're
disagree.
applying, you would say power of attorney is a natural law.
I would say
What do you think? How would
yes,
you define
because
natural? How would you define natural? You know, it means seen in nature, right?
yeah, because
And that's not how you would define it.
well, I would say marriage is a part of nature, like man and woman so coming together
Power
as
of attorney is what we're
of
talking
one. I know of coming together
You
as
think
one
in nature,
flesh
you
to
think
be
in nature that
to be
animals
become one.
Let's
Yeah.
you come
So
on, bro. Come on. Let's be for real, bro. You
not
cannot conflate things in society to being natural law. Like that is a step insane. Come on.
well. I'm not saying
Animals
that
don't have
power of
power of
eternity.
attorney. Yeah.
I'm saying the fact that your husband or your wife gets to, you know, can go buy a car in both
That's
of your
not seen in
names. Can
nature. None of this is
I?
seen in nature. None of this is natural.
I think you're missing what I'm trying to
I don't
get
even think
at.
marriage is natural.
Well, it is.
I like unionship and in terms of like
Yes, that
getting
is
together.
marriage.
Marriage of what
That
we
is
see,
marriage.
there's marriage for in society is that there's like legal applications to that. None of that is
Yeah,
seen.
none of that's marriage. That's a bunch of
Yeah,
made up.
like power of attorney is one of them.
Yes, but
So it's not natural
family.
law. So
Do
how
you
does that
agree?
make
Do
ours
you think
moral?
that families are a part of nature?
Do I think that families are a part of nature? Yeah,
Yes.
yes, the family structure. I don't. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
They have
So what I'm
children.
saying is that
I don't
on
know if
that
they would
level of this
consider.
is
I don't know if like animals would consider like the person that they procreate or that they reproduce with or have sex with their
animals
family.
can't well, they'd be wrong. But animals can't
A lot of
consider
animals
at
rape, like
all.
you know, it's like
So
natural for a lot of animals to like rape other animals, right? Like I don't think that I don't know in so much that they would even consider that like family as much as they would their kin. I think that would be the sense of family. So I don't know how
okay,
that would
sure.
apply to like a wife, like in this situation where you would get power of attorney over your wife, God forbid, obviously, but you know, like in a marriage with anyone, the husband would get power of attorney over the other, the wife over the husband. There's no way that exists in nature, right?
Yeah, and I'm not trying to say that
So
that
what makes it moral to you if you base it off natural law?
it's based off of natural law, but you extrapolate
That's the part you
from
don't want to be.
no, you extrapolate from natural law. For instance, uh, not to be graphic, P go inside V. So you extract from that. Gay marriage doesn't exist. It's just a civil union between two people, but it's
Okay.
not.
Okay.
So you
In
extrapolate
nature,
from the natural law.
in nature, a deer doesn't get to decide if a doe lives or dies. So we extrapolate from that that the husband doesn't decide if the wife lives or
But
dies.
we're in nature.
Why
You
does
can't
he?
discount humans.
Why
We're
does he? Why
also
do you?
nature.
No,
So
no, no, no. Now you're
you're
conflating
saying
what
we're
is
not in
natural.
nature?
It is what's
Humans
seen
aren't
outside of
natural?
society. No, no, no. Wait, we are. Yes, we are.
Okay, I
Yes,
was
but the
like,
things
what are you
we
talking?
create aren't. Just because we create something doesn't mean it's natural. Like, right?
Well, yes.
Okay, so there's literally no way.
I'm not saying power of attorney is part of nature. Obviously, there's no power of
There's
attorney.
also no
Deer's
way
not
you can,
walking in with a briefcase going, all right, I'm the attorney and I got power over this
and you
other
couldn't
deer.
extrapolate
No,
it. How do
I'm
you,
saying
you couldn't extrapolate that from nature in any way that
yes,
actually
you can
logically makes sense?
because you can extrapolate the oneness of the family unit.
No,
And
no,
from that unity, you can
no,
extrapolate that I get to
no.
decide things for my children. That's
What
a
oneness?
natural part of
Most
life.
animals, there's so many
Do you
animals.
think
Do
I
that.
naturally lord over my children? Lord, not in an aggressive way. I just mean I'm in charge of them
Do I,
naturally.
do I
That's not
think
a human construct. I'm supposed to rear my children. Like I get to, hey, don't stick your hand in the fire. Don't do that throughout all of human history.
I don't
That
know.
is
I
a
would say it's
natural part of
probably
it.
natural to care for children. I don't know if I would put in the your children. I think that it
As
becomes easier for it to normally be your child, but I think that if we're talking about nature, most things would care for a child that they saw alone, right? So when it's your child,
yes,
I don't, so if it's your child, I don't know how much I would place on it being yours over it being a child. That would be my argument.
I'm saying, do you think that when humans, whenever we evolved from whatever we evolved from,
Mhm.
and we were talking, I don't know, when we moved from grunts to
Yeah.
some sort of language, do
Yeah.
you think they were like, oh, you know what? We should start taking care of our own kids? Or do you think that they were already taking care of the things that came out of their bodies? My guess would be they were already
Well,
taking care of the
again,
thing that came out of them.
yeah, again,
What?
but I think you're kind of like it's kind of like I think it's I don't know if I could place it being their child above a child. I think it is natural to care for a
Regardless,
child.
I'm just trying to say that's a nat. So me like deciding what school my kids can go, yeah, that's not like from natural law in the sense that in nature the deers are deciding, but it's from natural law in the sense that
I wouldn't think any
a
no
part
no
of nature
no
I am
no
supposed to
what
guide and
no
take my kid and raise them and protect them
mm,
and educate them or whatever,
mm,
show them how to make a fire. Like that's baked into our DNA. We're supposed to do that. And so
no no I would
adding on to
disagree with that.
that,
Yeah, that's
what?
not natural. That's not what nature. That's normal. It's become normal over time. I think you're
Nah, you're
conflating
tweaking.
normal and
You're
I think you're
you're
conflating
tweaking. Nah, nah.
normal and natural.
No.
Natural means
It
seen in nature.
yeah, and it is
So
seen in
you
nature.
can't say
It is
things that
seen in
are
nature.
no, you're taking something that like isn't even seen in nature
What's
and
not
you're
seen in nature? Parents taking care of their children? Yes, it is.
parents having children, yes, but like
And
one
taking care of them.
it's also seen in nature that like the animals will like eat their offspring when they're born. Is that something we extrapolate? Like again, one, it's not just normal and it's not seen in nature to send your kid to a school. Power of attorney isn't seen.
That's
These
not what
aren't
I'm
things
saying.
you could in any way, even more so
Extrapolation.
if you're talking husband and wife. There is no scenario in which you could extrapolate that from nature. There
Yes, you
is no
can.
scenario.
Husband and wife? Yes, you can.
Yes.
P and V.
No, what are you talking? Like I'm talking about power of attorney from a husband and a wife.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant the concept of
No, yeah, no,
man
no.
and woman,
That is
man and
natural.
wife.
I mean, I don't know if I would
Uh,
say natural, like the man and a woman,
eh,
male and female to
yeah.
reproduce and stuff. Natural, yeah. But
Power
the
of a
one having the power over the other to decide if it dies or there's nothing in nature you could extrapolate that for. Yet you create the exception for it morally.
no, I disagree because
So
I'm
you think it's
saying
murder?
no, I'm disagreeing that it's not natural
It's
because
not natural. It's not
I'm
natural.
saying it so is
How?
because when you come together as a union,
Hmm.
you are a union. That's it.
That's not even
That's
in nature. That's not even true in nature.
it just it is. I don't know what to tell
No.
you. There's a
You
yes,
think that once animals decide to be in a union, that they're just in a union
you're
forever?
saying animals. You can't discount humans. We're animals. We count.
Wait, hold on. Like even for us, that's not true. Though
What's not true?
you like what? Once you're in unions, you're just in a union. Like how did you even word that?
Yes, 1000%.
What did you say? What did you say verbatim? How did you word
Oh,
it?
I don't know what I said verbatim, but what I said was once you are in a union,
Yeah,
once I stick my P
yeah,
in that V,
yeah.
there's no going back on that. There's no erasing that. And that's why this is a whole
There's
side
that's see that's so
conversation.
vague.
This is
What
a
do you mean
whole
by that?
side conversation,
What do
but
you mean
this
by
is
that?
why
There's no erasing that.
like
There's
there
no
is
changing that happened. Yeah, but that doesn't make you in a
there is
union because you stick your P in
permanent
the
biological changes in the brain. You have become paired. And this is why
no shot.
this is a whole second thing, but this is why sex is not fun and games.
No, it is
You
just
have yes, now this is all true. This is all
no,
true.
no. Hold on,
But
wait. Do humans have sex for fun and games?
like, do they do it?
Do humans do it?
They try to, yeah. I
Do we
think
do we do it? Yes or no? Are there humans who have sex for no other reason than fun and games? You would have to say yes. Come on. Don't be crazy. I have sex for fun and games, Swa.
I think you do, but I think you're wrong.
Swa, come on, bro.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I think
You
you're
know
wrong.
people have sex for fun and games, Swa.
I think they are, but
You
I think the
know that
reason
they are, bro. There's no they think they are. They're having sex because to them it is fun. There are people who do that. You can't even concede that there are people who have sex solely because they think it is fun. Why do people have sex with condoms on? Swa, come on. Like, let's just be for real.
well,
Why do people on birth control have sex?
let me tell you why I'm having a
Just say
problem.
yes. Just
Let me
say
tell you
yes. You
no.
know it's
Let me just
true.
like it's
This is
only
so crazy.
it's only conditionally true, or it's only true from a certain point of view. To quote Obi-Wan Kenobi, like it's
Which could be true,
true in
though.
the sense that the forefront idea in their mind is, yeah, I'm gonna go get my rocks
No,
off.
you're presupposing
What's
your worldview on other people. Like
no,
you
but
understand that
what's
your
also
worldview holds
true
no
is
authority for how
what's
other people
also
feel.
true is why do you want to go get your rocks
No,
off?
no, no. Hold
Oh,
on though, because
because
you're
there's some
presupposing your
hole in your
worldview.
life. Oh, you don't feel like you're getting enough, blah blah blah. Oh, there's a chemical
No.
thing. Like there's so many
So
other
you think there's
reasons
zero? You think there are zero people in the world who have
that
ever had
purely no
sex
other inputs.
who have
Yes.
had sex because it's not fun? Okay, well, that's an absurdity in your belief. That's
Not,
outside of logic. I just want to clarify that that is
not
an
fun.
illogical belief. But
What
then,
I'm saying is in isolation. Like it could
okay,
be
so people have sex for
99% of
fun.
the
So if
reason.
it happens in isolation, then it happens sometimes. People have sex for fun. And you said humans are in nature.
Well, I'm saying that fun is part. I mean, I have sex for fun. That's
Yeah.
part of
Okay.
it.
And we're in nature and we have sex for fun, which means it's natural,
But,
right? And your worldview, if humans do something, it's natural, right?
well, not everything we do.
Okay,
Obviously,
but power of attorney somehow is, but sex isn't.
you're not. You're not. There's no way.
Then no, hold on, no, hold on, wait, hold
There's
on, no,
no
because what
way.
I'm confused
I must
about,
be explaining it very poorly
this
because
is
there's
what I'm
no
confused
way you
about, is
think I'm saying.
if we're saying that because humans do something, that it can be natural because we're seen in nature. If anything, sex is that sex for fun instead of reproduction is the easy thing we could extrapolate.
You're mistaking.
Power of attorney is not.
You're mistaking. So it's a nuanced and fine line, but there's a difference between P is meant for V in nature.
Yes, which makes it
Like
natural.
there's no other, yes, but that's not the same as just a being like an animal, a lizard, or whatever, doing an activity. They are nature, but the P and V is uniquely, that's part of the biology. Like that's in nature in a deeper sense than just like a person did a thing.
Yeah.
So those aren't the same. So I'm not saying because we have sex, it's natural. I'm saying because we have sex in the way that we're like, there's only one way to have sex, essentially reproductive. I
There's
mean,
not
like,
though. There's not.
I mean,
There's one way
defining
animals have sex, which you said that you don't think.
defining reproductively. I
No,
mean,
no.
like,
Well, yes, but not sex, period. And you just said that you don't even think animals are the only qualifier for natural. So I don't understand how you
well,
can
how could they
hold
be?
the.
Because we're animals.
Well,
That
yeah.
doesn't
So
make any
how could you
sense.
hold the standard that any other kind of sex isn't natural? I mean, this is like a different argument, but like, I just that blows my mind too. Is if animals aren't the qualifier for what's natural, then how is only P and V natural? Because
Okay, let
that
me
the
see
only
if I let me
qualifier for
try it
that
one
is
more time. Let me try one more time.
no. Hold on. Okay, yeah, go because that's a whole different
Because
debate.
I
I
don't
won't
think
attack
I'm
you with that one right now.
yeah, I don't think I'm explaining it well. What I'm saying, really think about what I got to with the straw idea. So this straw is designed for drinking. That's what it's for. I
Mhm.
can shove it up my butthole, but that's not what it's for. That's not a natural use of it, despite it being something that I did. So what I'm saying when I say P and V is natural, I mean that's what it's for. That's what the penis is for, to
You're
ejaculate
so
into the vagina.
okay.
That's
I
what
see
it's
what
for,
yes,
or
I see what you
to
mean.
piss.
I
And
see what you mean.
so humans, parts of us, like
Mhm.
me making the straw isn't a part of nature. No, but like I naturally grow hair. That's a
Yeah.
part of nature. Humans are supposed to have
Yes.
hair. When you
Yes.
don't have
Because
hair,
animals
it's
also
alopecia.
because
It's a
animals also
disease.
grow hair.
Yes, they're supposed to.
Yes.
And
The
so that's
straw
natural.
is
That's
normal. The straw being used in the cup is normal, not natural. Can we agree on that? It is normal to use the straw like that. It is abnormal to
I'm
shove it up your butt.
it
It is not
but
a
not only is it
natural.
normal, but not
It's
only
not
is it
a well.
normal,
It's
that
a
is
nat.
what it's
It's actually
designed for. That's its end.
technically it is unnatural to drink a drink with a straw. Right? What you're
That's
conferring there is what
probably
you're
fair.
conflating
But
there is normal and natural. It is normal for humans to use that straw to drink, but it
it's
is
not it's for more than normal though, because it's its purpose. That's why we invented the straw. That's what it's designed for. It's its end. That's what it is for.
That was the normal design, yes, or the normal use because of its design, yes.
I mean, yeah, that's why we designed it.
But you're
And
conflating
so
normal and natural.
any so a
You're like
straw,
widely conflating
what I'm
normal.
saying is a straw that fails to allow me to drink it
Mm-hmm.
through it is a bad straw.
Yeah. So
Objectively so.
conforming to a standard, usual, typical, or expected. Do you think that what you're saying is normal now? Because natural is existing in or caused by nature, specifically not made or caused by humankind. So, like, can we come to the agreement that you were conflating natural and normal? Because they are two different things, and the straw is normal, but it's not natural.
Well, I'm not arguing that the straw is natural.
Power
I'm
of
arguing
attorney is normal and not natural. That was the next step. If we could agree on the straw.
the natural part of it is not the label power of attorney or any of the governmental structures
Okay, so
behind
then
that. The
where outside
normal
of
part
humankind, where outside
is
of humankind is
my
that seen?
mating partner and making decisions for them when they're incapacitated. That's the normal bit.
That's
Or
normal. I would
sorry,
agree that's normal.
that's
I would absolutely give you it's normal. And if you wanted to morally justify it off
that's the
being normal.
natural bit.
No,
That's
look,
the
if you wanted to morally justify it off being normal, that's fine with me. I just when you're saying it's natural, that's insane. You're muted.
I'm saying
You're back.
what?
You're back.
Oh,
I think it was because we were talking over each other.
okay. No, what I'm saying is natural is a two mates. One of them breaks a leg or whatever, taking care of the broken mate, making decisions.
That's not natural.
Okay,
That's
I'm
not,
gonna.
no,
It
no,
1,000% is. It 1,000%
no,
is.
no.
1,000%.
What animals, like what is the, what it, where in
So many.
nature do animals
Let me look it up. So
exercise
many.
a power of attorney like action over other animals?
About to look it up right now.
That is insane. Like that is just like these things are not natural. These things are normal, right? They're expanding to a standard. And in society, we as humans have started to do this. We as humans have done it. I would even say as humans, I think this might be a stretch because I don't know if power of attorney exists in every society. And I know it hasn't all throughout history, right? So, like, I would say it's normal for Americans to exercise the power of attorney privilege. And if you wanted to morally justify it as that, I would say that's fine, but then I think you would be on a losing ground, which is why I think you so hard want to make this natural and not normal, because I would just say it's normal for humans to get abortions. It's normal for humans to have reasonings to want to end the pregnancy, which is why I think you won't bite the bullet on this being normal.
So mated swans or geese mate for life. I'm sure we all know that from like love story stuff. And when one of the mates is injured, they will protect that mate, bring it food, stand guard, take care of its own, make survival decisions on their behalf. This is normal. Alphas and wolf packs making choices for the injured pups and stuff. Yeah. This is 1,000% baked
None
into,
of that
that's power of attorney. That's power of attorney.
No, it's not. That's
it
not. That's not ending their life. That's like protecting someone wounded. Yeah, I would agree that might be natural, like the instinct.
But making the decisions.
I would say empathy. I would say empathy is natural, and that is where I would confer that to be. Power of attorney is a very specific decision, typically financial. It's typically because if you're thinking about empathizing, most people are going to want the chance to continue to live. Most families aren't going to.
Well, now you're conflating power of attorney with euthanasia. Power of attorney can apply way before you're on your deathbed. It just means you can't make decisions for yourself.
Right.
Like, no, I have power of attorney over my children right now.
Conflation about someone who is only kept alive by a machine. If he was taken off the machine, he would not be alive.
Yeah, I know, but you can't do that. You can't just isolate it to one thing. You said power of attorney.
No, that's how you test. That's how you test the consistency of your logic and maybe test if your intuitions are leading you wrong. Because if you think that any living human organism should not, that it is not, that they should not be murdered, it's unjust, then you would have to hold that same principle for people on end of life care, and you couldn't justify it through natural law because it's not natural. You would have to.
It's not even.
You could.
I don't even need to justify it.
You could justify
natural law because I can justify it through
support it.
Because I can justify it through consent anyway. So
no, I'm saying in that example, they never spoke about it.
This is what I'm saying. When you get married, you spoke about it. You know, when you get married, if I'm in a situation, that person can control all my money. All my money.
Specifically, never talked about it with my dad.
You don't have to. It's just like it's it's what you, it's the same
Wait,
argument.
hold on. If you sign something and you don't know everything that's in it, and something is in it that you didn't know, you don't think that's coercion?
You know it's in there. That's how
You
marriage
don't.
works.
No, not everyone
Yeah,
knows that.
every marriage works that way. If
I literally lived through this. Like I lived through this, and I don't know what you're talking about. Like
what I'm saying, what I'm
my
saying is,
mom was smacked in the face when she realized that it was on her to make the decision. I literally
I'm not,
remember
it's
that.
not my fault that she's uneducated. I'm
It's
just
not
saying,
your fault. I'm just saying it's a real life situation
no,
that
she might have
get
been
married.
uneducated and not known that that's how
People
a
get
marriage
married and
works.
they don't realize that, oh, if I am on my deathbed or my
Yeah,
significant other
yeah.
is,
People
I
get
now have
married.
to make that decision. People get married
Yes,
and never
yes,
talk about
and
it.
that's why marriage is 50% of them into divorce. People get married and don't know what marriage is all the time. Of
Yes.
course.
Yes.
But what I'm saying is,
Which means there's no
it
consent
is
there. There's
baked
no
into,
consent there. There's no consent there.
I mean, only in the sense
Can you
that,
think of any other scenario where consent isn't direct? Consent is direct. You can't consent to something and you're consenting to everything else, even if you don't know about them. That's insane to say. That would be to say, if you signed a contract and there was in the contract, I can kill you at any moment, you consented to it just because you didn't read that one line of the contract or something. Like that's insane.
no, it's like if I decide to have a kid, like decide to have it, and
Mhm,
then we give birth to it and
mhm,
we discover that it has Down syndrome,
mhm.
I consented to take care of that Down syndrome kid. I did. I consented to having it. I didn't know that it was gonna have Down syndrome, but I don't just get to just be like and leave the hospital. I have to either adopt it out. I'm still in its care. I consented. This is the same scenario. When you get married, it's not my fault that people don't pay attention to the vows, for better or for worse, in sickness and in health. They know what they're saying. They're saying, yeah, when you get sick, I'll still be here. Blah blah blah. When our lives get worse, I'll still be
No,
here.
that's
This
and
is
you're
what
comparing
marriage
two different
is.
things. I would maybe agree with you on the Down syndrome scenario, but I don't think because that's talking about understanding possible like risks, right? When you're
Yes,
having a
and a
child.
possible risk of marriage is you might end up in a coma.
Because that's a
And
specific agreement, right? It is agreement. It is a power you are passing over to that person. It's not like a risk, like, oh, you might be, you might become my power of attorney if I die. No, it's like you will. So it's absolute. So I would say
well, yeah,
there needs to be direct, there needs
the
to be
if,
direct consent
no way.
for it to be an
No,
absolute, for any
the it,
absolute.
the if is if you end up in that scenario. She
No,
might
because if
not.
you don't know that that's what that means, it's not like because you said in sickness or in death. I know that now if I'm on my deathbed, you have consent to end my life. If you think that
So
it's
what are you proposing? We need educational classes before anybody's allowed to get married so that they
well,
know
for
how
me, I don't
it
care.
works.
For me, I wouldn't consider that to be a person. You would. That's why I'm asking you. I wouldn't consider someone only kept alive by a machine to be a person.
Well, again, you can't isolate. You have to. Power of attorney
So
is
for me, it would
they
be
get
unplug it, plug them back in, unplug it again, kick them in the face, plug it
no.
back in, and unplug it. That as far as I care.
They get. I think you say that, but if it was your son, you would not be saying that.
Well, yeah, because
But
I would have a different like moral bias.
exactly. So, or I would say moral intuition that it's just not true that that's just not a person. But what I'm saying is, when you get married, part of getting married is everything you own is the other person's now, and vice versa. That's what marriage is.
I don't know.
That's just how it works. Unless you have a prenup and you decide to split things up. Otherwise, everything like
Do
I
you
can go
think so?
tomorrow and get a loan in my wife's name and it's not illegal because we are one person. We
So
are
do you
married.
think if
That's how it
two
works.
people come under an agreement to get married and not do that, or let's say they never even talk about it, but they live like that. They never make their stuff one. They never do. They end up divorcing or whatever. And they just take their stuff because they never even thought of the idea of being one, right? It just naturally happened, normally happened like that. I won't use naturally for you.
Sure.
Would you have considered them ever married? Do you think that that is a required
Which
characteristic of marriage?
which
The
characteristic
oneness
specifically?
or whatever you spoke to, becoming one and putting everything together.
Well, even if you don't put it all together, like what I'm saying is legally, it doesn't matter.
Right.
You have no say. Like when you get married, your wife, like my wife could sell my car tomorrow without my consent and it would be 100% legal.
Right. And I'm saying you could divorce and she could come after some of your stuff also because it's
Yeah, because it's hers. Yeah,
right. But I'm saying
exactly.
so if they divorce and they just never held that standard, or let's just say, what if they get married and I'll just paint it to you different. Let's say they get married and they explicitly state, we are not one. Everything I own is mine, everything you own is yours. And they agree to this. Would you consider them married? Like, is that a required characteristic of marriage to you?
Um, so I mean, I guess then what? I mean, if they didn't make the vows, then I don't know how they like
Like
how.
they did all of it. Like let's just say they're like, yeah, we'll do all of this, but like we know, like marriage is a
Oh,
legal
okay. So
construct.
they say the stuff. Well, then
They say
yeah.
it all, they go through the motions, but they're like, we're gonna live outside the bounds of that.
To clarify, when you say we're not, are we just talking about the owning of stuff, or
Like
which?
let's say, like even like let's say power of attorney, like they sign their power of attorney over to like their brothers or something, like their family. They never merge their bank accounts. They like they don't even move in together. Let's say that they live separately, but like they hang out every day. They go to all this. Would you consider them married? Like is the oneness, the unity of required characteristic, or is it just like is it just you go, you do the vows, man and woman, you reproduce? Like are those the like is the
I mean,
unity, the oneness a required characteristic?
what I would say is the required characteristic is making the vows, but
But
making
no,
them
I'm
in
specifically,
honesty. And
okay.
so, if you're not going to, if you got married knowing in sickness and in health, but if she gets sick, I'm out. Then no, the entire thing's
Okay, so
invalid because you're
what
lying.
if they got married and agreed to it honestly, but then like a year in, they're like, you know what, we kind of want to do this differently, and then started doing that? Would you consider them married after that point, or would they have only been married the first year?
I think they'd be married, but now would be engaged in some sort of
Okay, so then unity
infidelity.
isn't a required trait, and oneness
Well,
isn't a
now you'd be
required
in
trait.
some infidelity because you'd be breaking your vows. You'd be destroying the marriage. You'd be
You
ignoring.
think
It's just like cheating. You'd be saying,
isn't infidelity sexual? Is that not just explicitly sexual?
I need to look up the word, but I've heard people use it for financial. Like if I went and emptied all my bank accounts tomorrow and spent it on something, that would be cheating on my.
I mean,
Like that's
colloquially, I
still,
know what you mean.
yeah, yeah. So I would look at it as like spitting on your vows at that point. Like you're just saying I don't actually mean any of the things I said.
But
In which case,
even if they're
but you
like,
did say them at one point,
but if
so
they are still like, we still love each other, we still want to be married forever, we still have sex, we
well,
have
I don't think
we
marriage is
reproduce.
about love. So
Like, let's
that's
say, I don't know what your qualifications are. I know
yeah,
religious people often it's like reproduction and stuff, whatever.
yeah.
So let's say they meet all of those, but just that one unity thing, you don't think unity is a required trait.
Well, again, I think I need to really pinpoint what you
So
mean
then
by the unity to really answer that fully, because
anything you would consider unifying in a relationship, becoming
like
one.
if actually physically joining your bank accounts has no, that doesn't matter at all.
In
If
every
that's like the
sense,
question.
outside of marriage, they are an individual person. They file their taxes, married or single or whatever it is. The married filed, not jointly, but
Yeah,
filed,
yep.
whatever the status. I'm single, so I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not single.
It's married filing separately.
I'm
Yeah.
single on my taxes. Don't kill me. Okay, that's what I meant. Let me clarify that before I get shot.
Yes. Yeah.
No, but
Fiance, right? You have a fiance or a girlfriend? I forget.
we're just dating.
Girlfriend. Okay. Yeah,
She
she
wants to be
shoots you in the
fiance. We
face.
will be soon, but it's gotta be it's gonna be
Hey,
a big
based.
moment. Yes. But yeah, no, like in every aspect of life, and we've gone way over. I thought maybe
I know.
we'll go
Yeah,
over,
you're gonna have
make
to
it a
cut this down.
well, no, we'll make it the 10th episode special.
Oh yeah, there we
Yeah,
go.
it'll work out. But to put a pin on it, yeah, for if in every aspect outside of being married, they're individuals, they're their own person, they are not unified in any sense, not on a bank account, not on house, not on taxes, not on cars, not on anything, not on finances. They just go on dates and reproduce, and they're married. are
Uh,
they are they actually married?
I think so, but again, I
Okay,
really would need to
so
like
then you do
it's
agree that
way more in depth.
people can be married and not be joined as one, because I think
Well,
that would also disqualify
I
power of
think
attorney being consensual.
I think that the being one thing is ontological. I don't think it's participatory. I don't think you have any say in it. I think it's just the right. Like I said, legally speaking,
Would you
it doesn't
concede that's
matter if they're
just your
bank.
perspective?
No, because like I said, legally, even if your bank accounts are separate, it does not matter. You can legally go take all the money out of your wife's account, and it's legal. It's just legal.
You can go, like, what if they went and they specifically were like,
That's why
I'm gonna
marriage is
take
scary, by the way.
I'm gonna take you off my power of attorney. And they took each other off their power of
Yeah,
attorney, but they didn't add anybody else. Would whoever becomes their power of attorney, would they have consented? to being killed by that person.
So hold on. They take their wife or spouse off of power of attorney.
Yeah, they're
Pick
like,
their
I don't want it to be you, but they never get around to appointing anyone specific, never talk about it with anyone.
oh, so they don't
They
pick
take them off
somebody
and then
else.
die the next day, something they never end up putting someone else off.
I think I that's a question for like the courts and stuff, but I they might
I'm
they
talking about
might
morally. Would you say that they had consented to whoever chose to take
oh
them off into life care, or would that be murder in your worldview?
uh that's a good question. Um
I think it has to
and
be.
and these aren't everybody in the audience. These aren't fleshed out ideas. This is all live.
Yeah,
I would say I would probably need to think about it deeper, but I don't know
I think it would have to be.
that because I'm not a consent is not the only facet of morality, obviously for me. So I'm not even sure that I think that it's valid to take like I don't think it's a valid move to take them off
So you don't think
power of attorney to
you
begin
think it is
with
immoral?
necessarily.
You think it's immoral
Not
to
immoral, but I don't
hold
know
on?
that it's valid.
No, not that. I'm asking for syllogism. Do you think it is immoral to end someone's life without consent?
Not
And
always.
I'll say an innocent person to end
Okay.
an innocent person's life. I understood where
I
where you're
immediately
going.
went to war.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So is
Uh,
it unjust or is it immoral to end an innocent person's life?
yeah.
Okay. Is it possible for a power of attorney to not have consent, like in the situation I just described to you?
Yeah, that's where I'm not sure because I don't know.
Well,
Because
you
again,
just
if
said, you did
well,
just
but
say.
the reason why I'm saying, and you can say this is why consent always has to be direct, but I think it's just way more wishy washy because let's say the courts were like, doesn't matter, you guys are like legally binded or whatever, you're still power of attorney, doesn't matter that they took you off, and the other person didn't know that that was how it worked. Well,
Well, I mean, I could
now
paint to be clear, I could paint it like it could be a person who isn't married, their entire family is dead, so a power of attorney is just appointed to them. Like there's plenty of situations that I could describe to you where consent wasn't given. I'm just asking if in those
okay,
situations,
that's a better one
yeah,
actually
if in
because
those situations would there be consent? They didn't
but
consent,
then
right? So then that would in that syllogism, I would say that that would have to be murder to you, right? That would to logically follow.
I think there's a and again, these aren't fleshed out thoughts, but I think there's something to be said about a reasonable, not like reasonable doubt, that's not the phrase, but like reasonable access to information. Like if it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know, for instance, people like to use the whole, consent to sex is consent to a child. There's reasonable education everywhere
For power of
that,
attorney, you're talking about?
that, well, now I'm talking about as a example, I'm just talking about reproduction. There's a reasonable expectation that that when sperm go inside vagina, baby could happen.
Mhm.
So which in some people's minds can absolve any. But I didn't know. It's gone now because everybody knows. It doesn't matter. Like you're not dumb. And so where does power of attorney and knowing that like someone will be appointed for you if you don't have any living family? If that's par for the course and everybody knows that that's the governmental standard, then like how much
Okay, well here,
culpability is there is up in the air.
let me give you another hypothetical, and this is completely hypothetical just to kind of test your logic here. Let's say that somebody ended up on end of life care and they had two existing family members. One would have wanted to keep them alive, and one wants to pull the plug. They don't know which family member it will be. It ends up being the one who wants to pull the plug. So they pull the plug on that family member's wishes. And after we find out through like a brain scan or something that the person specifically wanted the other person so he could be kept alive, would you consider that murder at that point?
Um, well, it's not.
Because you would know
At best
directly
it
that
can be
you would
is
know they directly didn't
manslaughter.
consent. You would know they, well, yeah, but would it be immoral? I
Yeah,
guess I should ask. Would
yeah.
it be immoral to you?
So, do you believe in immoral actions, but not necessarily the person having moral culpability?
I think that in the overarching sense, you can do something immoral and not
Know
be
that
an
it's
immoral
wrong.
person, but I think that you are still doing something immoral.
But okay, but we agree. Like if you for some reason didn't know it was wrong in any way or
Yeah. I
whatever,
see. I would
or
weigh morality more as like a,
accidents.
yeah, I would
Com-
weigh it more as like a totality. So if you're like a great person your whole life and you do one thing and you accidentally, you didn't think it would happen this way and it ended up being an immoral thing, I don't think that makes you a bad person all of a
yeah,
sudden, but I
like for
still
instance,
think you would have done something immoral.
I don't think if I accidentally crash my car and the other person ends up dying, I
Mhm.
didn't. It, me killing them, sure, like that's like it's wrong that they died. They shouldn't have
Yeah.
died. But I don't even think that we should have like those types of people should be punished. In my opinion, that's like a hot take ish. But
Yeah.
because they didn't do it, they didn't try to. It wasn't on purpose. It's just the way the life happens. So I could see maybe it being immoral, but not any moral culpability. Because when you're the power of attorney, you're just doing what you think is the best, and you're essentially, subbing in for the individual who can't speak for themselves, and
Mhm.
that's just the best system that we have since we can't read
Would you
minds.
accept that justification from a mother who aborted a fetus at 25 weeks?
That she didn't know was a person
No, or that she didn't know what the she
that she was
thought
doing was
she
wrong.
couldn't, like, in that situation, the person, yeah, didn't know that the person would have
Yeah,
wanted to be kept
I'm.
alive. Let's say a mother
Oh,
said, "Hey, I ended the pregnancy because I thought my fetus wanted me to. I thought that's what
oh, well,
the
that
fetus
doesn't work
wanted me to
because
do."
we know that everybody wants to live on a
That's not
biological level.
that's
On a biological level, and if you don't, you're sick, and we institutionalize you and get you help.
yeah, that's not
Every
true.
every every cell in your body screams to live. It
Do you
will.
think the basis for justification of life is wanting to live?
The basis of
Do
justification
you
for
think, like,
life.
if
What does
you
that mean?
don't want to live, do you think that it is amoral to kill that person?
Uh, Generally, yeah.
Hmm. Like,
I think there's something's wrong with that person.
I'm saying if somebody doesn't want to live
Yeah, I think that
and
person needs help.
somebody walks up and shoots them, you would consider that amoral, like not moral. You wouldn't
Oh
consider
no,
it moral.
oh no, it's immoral. Sorry,
Okay. Yeah.
not
Yes.
amoral.
Yeah. So I don't know how does wanting to live then change anything?
Well, I'm just saying that argument doesn't work. You were saying I didn't know we do know that babies want to live because it's a biological
Well,
inclination.
no, we don't know that because what if the fetus was sick?
What do you mean?
Like, what if the fetus had the brain, the neurological?
Well, it doesn't because it doesn't have consciousness until 4 months. So
No,
we
I
know it's
said
not
I said like,
depressed.
well, I mean, okay, I don't know where you're even getting that from.
Go look it up. It's on what's
You
that
know
big
that like fetuses, like you can brain scan a fetus at like 25 or 26 weeks.
yeah, they have brain activity, but they don't have no thoughts, so they're not depressed.
Well, okay, hold on. You think depression comes from thoughts?
Well, I don't know about comes from thoughts,
Depression
but
is like largely like a sensation, like it's also sensory.
yeah. I'm not saying it comes from thoughts. I just
So
mean
do you
it's
think
not
a
like they're
fetus
like,
could
oh
feel
man,
depression?
I want to die this existence. The
Hmm.
only way, and maybe this is something that happens medically, is like if somehow the fetus kept on like un you can't keep unimplanting, but if it
Yeah.
like was unimplanting itself, then like maybe you could try to make some sort of like it's suicidal. But like the idea that the mom would be like, I had no idea. That's just not. We do know. We do have an idea because, like I said, even like germs and little tiny
Okay.
bacterias, like they'll
So,
run from fire. Like
okay,
nothing
here's
wants to
another
die.
hypothetical. Here's another hypothetical. That mom tries to abort the fetus and says that as her justification. The fetus is survives the abortion, and then when it gets older, it says, "Hey, when I was a fetus, I wanted to die."
Yeah.
Is the mother now not morally culpable?
Well, again, like I said earlier, I think it's still wrong to kill somebody who's
Oh,
suicidal.
okay,
So
yeah, no, I'm sorry.
you
I
would
thought that
still
meant
be morally culpable, but they would be vindicated as far as they were right
hmm.
that the baby did want to die. But that's I still don't think that's morally justifiable. Anyways, I don't think suicide is. I think suicide's horrible. I don't think. Well, nobody thinks suicide's good.
So I guess
Clearly,
why wouldn't you hold that same standard on end of life care then, that okay, we shouldn't pull the plug, or pulling the plug is immoral because everybody wants to live on a biological level? Why wouldn't you hold that same standard?
because if there's a scientific reality that they're not going to be able to
What if it's unknown? It's not always
live,
known. What if there was a chance? What if there was a good chance? What if it was at least
Well,
50%?
then, yeah, I think you should absolutely keep them on, and not doing so would be an immoral act.
So if somebody was 25, and I don't know if I asked you this in the debate, but if
Hmm.
somebody was 25
Hmm.
and we could keep them alive on a machine until they were 75, and at 75 they could be taken off the machine possibly and live. They had, let's say, a 50% chance after 50 years. Is the family morally culpable to keep that person on the machine for 50 years? And if
If
not,
they, sorry, if they could, in 50 years, they'll be okay. You're
in
saying, but
50
they
years
don't
there will
know.
be in 50 years there will be a 50% chance that they could live off of the machine. How you just said if there was a 50% chance or more,
Right, right, right.
so there's
And
that
prior
chance.
to that, there's a lower chance, I'm assuming.
Yeah, but there, it's known absolutely 100% in
Oh,
50 years that chance goes up to 50%.
yeah. I mean, I think so. I think so. I think the
So
only issues I run into is resource based
yeah.
issues of like beds and just life saving like equipment and stuff. And but the reason that this is slightly different is
What
because,
if it was 9 months
and then they'll get better.
and then they have a 50% chance?
Oh, I mean, 1,000%. That one's way easier.
So if the
But
family didn't have the financial, what if the family didn't have the financial ability to keep
well,
them up
I
for?
think that the U.S. government should pay for it.
Well,
Life,
yeah,
liberty,
but do
pursuit of
you think that
happiness.
do you think that is there something morally culpable with that? Or what if they did? What if they did have the money, but they'd have to like sell their house and their car and they'd have to like, live in a homeless shelter? Should they do that? Should they have to do that? Since it would
Uh,
be murder not to?
Um, should they have to do that?
Mhm.
What do you mean by have to? Laws?
Like ought they to? We're talking like
More, moral sense? Should
yeah.
they?
Mhm. Is
Um,
it morally permissible for them not to?
so there's a. Uh, I need to do some more moral theology and
Mhm.
theory reading, because I know that there's the whole like, if I buy this iPhone and I have the knowledge that it was, slave labor was used, like a separation of like, there's some wiggle room with the. I'm kind of going off tangent, but there's a difference between like the person's dying, right?
Mhm.
This is not analogous to a person who is being born, because we know their future is to live. And
We
if
don't know
we
that.
leave them
We don't
alone,
know that.
I mean, we
But
do.
we
We leave
don't.
them alone.
We don't. Wait, what? Hold on. So a fetus could just as easily die the next day as somebody on a machine. Like those risks are equal, right?
No, I mean,
What?
they are in the process of dying.
You think a fetus has no chance of dying?
Not no chance of dying, but it's not
Fetus.
in the process of dying necessarily.
Well,
Where
I'm
the way
talking
that the
about.
person on the deathbed is.
Okay, what if someone could live a full life, but they'd have to be on a machine their entire life,
It's based. They should. What
and they
about
should.
that?
So it would be wrong to take them off of the machine.
I mean, yeah.
What if you just didn't have resources?
I mean, if we don't have the again, now you're. I guess the problem here
I'm seeing where
is,
you draw the line because to I guess to get to the point is the analogy is then where's the difference for like low income single mothers, for instance, who would get an abortion? I don't see how you could say,
yeah, they can give them
well,
up for
it
adoption, and there's hundreds of, or sorry, not hundreds, thousands of families waiting, and it's a myth that there's not. So you can just absolutely give them up for adoption.
well, there's not as someone
There
who's
is.
been
There's
someone
too
who's been
many.
adopted. So hold
Me
on,
too. There's
someone who
more.
was
There's
adopted.
more parents than
No
babies.
shot.
More
No,
parents than babies.
there's not more parents who want babies than there
Yes,
are.
there is. Yes, there is.
There's not.
Yes, there is. Especially once you add in the gays. Yes, there
There's
is.
literally. Did you live in a group home? Do you care if I ask that?
I don't care if you asked that, but no, I did not.
Okay, I lived in a group home and I lived there with teenagers, with people who
Yeah,
were 17,
those are
18,
those are teenagers.
about to grad. No, 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 no. Who had been there and were about to graduate out. There was specifically a kid who was 12 that had been there since he would my age when I was there, which I was 2. So he had been there 10 years.
Yeah,
I was there for,
yeah, you were two. I'm talking about newborn babies, to be specific.
yeah,
Like I've just found out I'm 4 months pregnant or whatever. Or when you find out, like two, not two.
6 weeks,
What
I think.
depends? I guess it just
6
depends on
weeks,
the
six
person.
weeks
Yeah,
or so. Yeah.
depends on your whatever. The earliest you find out. I just found out I'm 6 weeks. Contacted a adoption place like next week. Your baby will get a home.
I mean, not forever. There's high
99%.
standards to adopt, but
And by the way, in America, I don't know about China, any other Africa. I can't speak to that. In America, there is a waiting list. Like there is so many families. It's too long because there's not enough newborns. But the
yeah,
problem is that nobody wants to adopt 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds. That I will completely agree with anybody who says that because that's just true. Like, but newborn babies, there's not enough newborn babies for how many families desire a newborn baby who can't conceive or just want to help or gay and can't conceive or whatever. And I'm not like the rest of the pro-lifers. I am very for assuming that they're like upstanding people, which is my qualification for anybody, for gay peoples to adopt. I think it's absolutely insane for anybody in the pro life movement to be like, we don't want you to kill the baby, but we're not going to limit the amount of homes that it can go to. Like, why would you do that? That
yeah,
makes no
or
sense.
provide them free school lunches or
Yeah.
free,
Any of
free
that
school
stuff I think is
kindergarten.
super anti-life,
Also,
pro-death penalties, anti-life. But yeah,
same-sex adoption couples typically see better outcomes for children, and that's because, well, when you adopt, you typically are in a much better financial situation as
right.
well, and socioeconomic status is the highest indicator of pretty much, I mean, school, of health, of a lot of things for children. Socioeconomic status is going to decide that, and gay same-sex parents are going to be on the high end. But yeah, no, we went at that for, we were supposed to go at this for like what, 15 minutes, and we
Yeah,
like an hour. But yeah, we'll call this the 10th episode special. Maybe we'll do another long one for 100 or some of 50 or
yeah.
something, and we'll make it a tradition. But yeah, did you want any last? I don't want to feel like I cut you off. If you had any last points you want.
Yeah, I mean, just to wrap it up, I mean, I I I understand the pushing on the end of life stuff, but I really think that it's and not in a like you're doing it to be sneaky or anything, but I just think it's a disingenuous argument to compare, like not disingenuous, should say disanalogous argument to compare somebody who is we don't know if they're going to live at all. Like it's really just up in the air, or we really think they probably won't live and they've already lived a life of some sorts and there's power of attorney. And there's all these other factors, which are just not, there's nothing in the about to have a baby camp that can really be a 1-to-1. Like it's not really all that analogous, in my opinion. So I think it's sort of a red herring argument when we're talking about babies and innocent newborns who haven't done anything, haven't lived a life, and want to live. So I just don't think they're comparable. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, so I guess to wrap up on my end, I would just say I think that I like going down that kind of argumentation, I guess you could say, because I think that the logic has to track if your reasoning for fetuses is that being a human, a living human alone, or I guess I should say an innocent living human alone justifies your life, then I think you're adding additional requirements or conditions in when you say, well, end of life changes things because you're about to die. I don't think anyone would also say, okay, well, if we knew that a 20-week fetus could die by the age of 1, or they're going to be born sick where they have a high likelihood of dying in the next year, as someone on end of life care could, you're not then going to justify abortion through that. So, like, for me, it's just like, I guess if you wanted to respond.
I just wanted to add one thing to further clarify
Yeah.
why I think it's different, because I was going to say this earlier.
Mhm.
Why I think it's different is because the dying process has begun. So it's rather than like initiating the cause of their death, you're simply not intervening or refraining from saving them, which is a different situation than being the active cause for the suffering and death. Like to put somebody in a situation where they would be on end of life, like tubes and all of that, would be a horrible thing to do. That would be more analogous because we're talking about being the cause of the thing. If you're, that's why miscarriages aren't a problem
Well, no.
for the pro life camp. If
Yeah.
it's just naturally dying, that
Mhm.
sucks, but that's not the same. And end of life, you're naturally dying already. So
Yeah.
that's why I think it's
I would say that I don't think that's analogous because I don't think that you're directly removing a fetus from your body isn't directly killing it. It's your bodily autonomy. It's just you're not actively killing it. You could remove a fetus and it could be completely alive, and then it could die completely on its own. Yeah, it could die completely on its own after being removed alive. And that wouldn't be a direct killing.
they don't just remove it; they stab it, pull its legs off, poison it.
That's not true for every kind of abortion.
I'll link a video.
You can link videos, but like there's abortions that are non-lethal. Like you can get non-lethal. Like Harvard, for instance, most medical schools would just define abortion as the removal of a fetus from the body. And I don't remember the exact terms, but there are multiple
That's
terms
called a
that they use.
C-section.
Well, yeah, well, there's a C-section, but there's other kind like the vacuum abortion, which is the one where they're like graphically, that's the one most pro-lifers would, and I don't remember the word for it, but it's like essentially the vacuum. That like that's not the only form of abortion that they do. But what I would say is like, yeah, morally for me, if you're granting rights to a human on the fact that they're a human and they're alive and they're innocent, I think that you would have to apply those same rights to people on end of life care. And I think that in having to add other conditions, kind of takes away from their argument. And I think if you want to say, well, I grant additional rights to kids and fetuses and whatever, I think you have a stronger argument that way because, like, in society, we already do grant additional rights to children. But I just don't. I think it all boils down either to religion or misogyny, personally. SWA, I think, teeters the line of religion, not misogyny. To
Only recently, though. Remember, when we had our first debate, I was an atheist. So
when we had our first debate, I think you probably largely might have justified it through mostly like spiritual beliefs
what?
that you just wouldn't have detailed it. You wouldn't have labeled them as
Ma'am, I
spiritual.
based it off of the right to life.
Yeah. Which I think, and I think in that debate, it was more centered around our disagreement on how the right to life is applied.
Yes.
Because of that, if I remember correctly. But I'll have it linked in the description. You guys will have to check that out. I hope you guys enjoyed the special. I'm sorry that we went so over SWA if you had plans, but
Oh,
we
you're
will be
good.
back next week. We are not missing weeks again. Season 2
Yes.
is back. And until next time, peace.